Perfect. We are good to go.
All right. So just what's on the screen, please put your first and your last name um as your name in Zoom. The easiest way is to hover over your name, hit the little three dots, and then it is at the bottom that just says rename. So if you have any questions, whatever, send me a message in the chat. Taylor will be doing our training tonight, so I will be monitoring the chat as best I can. You can either put something in the chat for everybody to see, or you can unmute yourself. Once Taylor is done with the slide, he'll give everybody opportunities um, to ask as many questions as you need to. So, Taylor, if you want to just get it started, I just got a few things to say before we get fully rolling.
Yeah, you want me to go next slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so every time he does these pictures.
They're
First off,
beautiful pictures.
on behalf of Wheelhouse Umpires, want to thank everybody for being here. I know a lot of people have taken the training on Saturday or will be watching this video when we put it on YouTube a little bit later. But thank you for the time. We cannot have youth baseball without umpires. This is a job, and we pay good money, and we focus on some of those things. But at the end of the day, it's about youth baseball, giving back to the game that we all enjoy. Most, if not all of us, have played the game of baseball. So, want to thank everybody for their time and efforts here. Um, I'm Jordan. I run kind of the business side of things for Wheelhouse Umpires. So I do all the administrative stuff. So you've probably gotten emails from me. If you're a Wheelhouse person, you gotten emails from me, or I've reached out to you and we've had discussions. I'll do recruiting. Payroll is a big thing. I'll reach out about a lot of different payroll things coming up. I deal with coaches, rule questions. I'm the face of the organization outside of our group. So getting new business, working with the leagues, those types of things. Taylor will be doing your training tonight, and he is our trainer. He deals with all the equipment, and then he does a lot of the scheduling for our tournaments, which this year we have 34 of them, so a lot going on there. Kind of our head of umpire. So rule questions, any of the craziness that you have, you can go to Taylor. Scott Pape, who's in the bottom left and is has a child at this point. So very much older than that picture. He manages the regular season schedule. Regular season is self-assigned, but he manages when it comes to like reschedules and if you need games off or if we have extra games, he really runs the show there. And the guy in the bottom right is Parker Tice. Some of you may know him. He's a football coach at Woodbury High School. He's also runs a strength conditioning program there, and then he's a Spanish teacher at Woodbury Middle School. He's going to be new to our group this year. He's going to help with some of the regular season stuff with Scott. He's going to help manage some of the tournament stuff with Taylor, and then he's helping me on the back end. So Parker will be involved in a lot of different things. But everybody can be go-tos. If you have questions, we all talk and are in a group chat, so we can help you with whatever you need. Last thing is I will be marking everybody off for attendance here. If I don't recognize your name, which means you didn't put your first and last name in, or I don't recognize your name because you're not on my list, I will send you a message separately. Please respond to that message letting me know your information. So
Cool.
all I got. Taylor, you want to take it away?
Appreciate it, Jordan. All right. We will go from there. Do you want to go on this stuff at all or
Yeah,
no?
I'll talk about it.
Okay.
So working
Before,
with
Jordan,
Wheelhouse
before you
Umpires, we
go,
have a couple of minutes.
just wanted to clarify too with some of this stuff. If you're a Wheelhouse guy, this is going to cover all of this. If you are a Hudson or Wiper Lake individual, that first slide and then this slide will not apply to you. So we'll just try to preface when something does apply, it does not apply throughout this too. But you don't have to worry about this. You should have things through your own association. This is just for Wheelhouse umpires currently.
Yeah. So just a little bit about administrative. We've reached out to all of you if you've gotten, or at least most of you, about some of this, but an independent contract agreement is you just need to sign it and send it back to us. We need documentation. Make sure this is a job at the end of the day. It's pretty simple. If you have any questions or if your parents have any questions, please let me know. Concussion certification. You should have gotten a link on this. It's done once every 3 years. It's 15 minutes. It's online. It's free. It's pretty simple. It's just a good resource to have, and then we just need the document back. Banking information, most of you submit it when you did the sign up process through Google Forms. If you have not, I will reach out to you. It is hard to pay you for this job if I don't have your bank account because we do all direct deposit. So I will reach out to individually. Arbiter should be set up for everybody who has signed up with us. You should have got an email from Arbiter. If you did not get an email from Arbiter, please let me know. And then the last one is background checks. Everybody over the age of 18 needs to have a background check because it's working with kids. So I will also reach out, or Parker Tice will reach out about the background checks. You need all of this to get paid. Okay. The biggest ones are going to be independent contract agreement, concussion, and then background check. Bank account obviously is important, but it's a lot of documentation. It's simple, it does not take long. So please get that taken care of so that we can have this season move smoothly.
Beautiful. All right. Cool. I think that's all you got, right?
That's all I got.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jordan. I'm going to skip over this section and we can go with this overview first. So welcome everyone. Appreciate you joining tonight. I know it is a Tuesday night. You got homework. You just got home from school. You don't want to be on this. This is the last thing. I appreciate you coming. We'll try to make it as bearable as possible tonight for everybody, and try to go through things as much as possible here. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chats or take yourself off mute, and you can interrupt me at any point in time here. So more than happy to answer every questions. The guys on Saturday really, I'm gonna be honest, they gave me some challenging things that I got a little flustered. So up for the challenge for any additional questions on weird situations, anything you guys want to go over today, from that perspective too as well. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we do have Wheelhouse umpires on here. We have some White Bear Lake and we have some Hudson umpires. So appreciate you guys all coming and joining the fun in today. I will try to preface as much as possible when something applies to Wheelhouse, and then if it just applies to everybody. Most of the information we go through here is just going to be, umpire specific. So it's not going to deal with anything Wheelhouse, anything in between that too as well. When we get to about 7:30-ish, we're going to go over Arbiter, and Jordan will go over that piece of it. And Arbiter is going to be just for Wheelhouse umpires, so I'll preface it when we do that too as well. But Arbiter is going to be our scheduling software system, so really important that you listen to that, go over some of that information too as well. So we'll go through that. Other than that, like I said, we'll try to go through everything. You can see the overview that we have on the screen here tonight. We're really going to be focusing on that first half, that left side. So the professionalism, safety, non-baseball issues, administration, umpire mechanics, all that fun stuff too as well. The reason that we do this way is for a couple things. One of them is most people that are on here, or most of our umpires, are past baseball players, right? Like you know what a fair foul ball is. You know what a strike call is. You know what an out is. That's more in that second half. What we're really going to focus on today is going to be things that are umpire specific. So things that you may not know or probably don't know if you're a new umpire, and things that we want to get a good refresher if you have umpired with us before. And all of these things are going to be very important. The rules are something secondary, right? Like there's so many different rules that we can have. So I'm not as concerned about those things. But if you can get this first half really figured out, really down with all the umpire mechanics, the professionalism, things like that, that's really going to help you succeed as an umpire and kind of, excel you and become a very successful and move up the rankings with it too as well. So, but yeah, we'll be good. Gonna have a lot of fun tonight. It's gonna be great. Bear with me on that. For Wheelhouse guys, so this is a Wheelhouse thing. We started doing this last year and we're going to do it again this year. So we're doing some more in-season observations. So what I mean by that is basically we have Adam and Jim here, who are two of our observers. They will be going out during the weeks and on some of the tournaments too as well, and watching our umpires. So watching you guys and just basically just giving you some tips and things. They're not there to critique you. They're not there to say, hey, Johnny, you're a bad umpire or anything like that. They're just there to help you out as much as possible. You can see on those in-season observations, a lot of that's going to follow what we talk about today. So, mechanics, positioning, rules, strike zone, things like that, they're going to help you do that too as well with it. I will preface and say we don't typically reach out and say, hey, Jim's coming tonight or Adam. So, maybe a surprise, but just again, don't be stressed out. They're not there to, you know, critique you or say bad things. They want to make you a better umpire with it too as well. So just be watching that. Really nice guys. They will also be at mechanics training. So they'll be helping us teach some of the different mechanics stuff. So make sure you attend that if possible too as well. Cool. All right. So we're going to start out here with professionalism. So there's two things I'm going to go over a lot. And one of it's hustle, which we'll talk about, but the other one's going to be professionalism. These are two things that I think are very important when it comes to umpiring, and I would say Jordan would say the same, and all of our other umpires too as well. And the way I kind of look at this is, you're an umpire, but this is basically a job at the end of the day, right? So you should do like your regular job, or if this is your first job, these are really good things to take on to your, rest of your life and the rest of your different kind of career things too as well. But in terms from an umpire's perspective, your job as an umpire is to call the games according to the rules. So obviously, we don't want to apply rules that are incorrectly or do something that's wrong, which we'll go over in the second half of it. We're going to promote fair play. So obviously, we're there for youth. It's a lot of kids that are playing. You guys yourself are playing. You want it to be as fair as possible so that at the end of the day, the umpire doesn't determine that outcome of that game or anything. Consistency. We want to be consistent on both sides with our balls and strikes, safe and out calls, applying the rules, everything from that perspective. We don't have any bias or anything like that in ours. So we want to be really consistent with that. We want to control the flow of the game. So, there's been horror stories you've probably heard of, guys that are, out there for 3 hours. If we can, tell people to hustle in between innings, if we can, make sure we're getting just enough pitches, we're really making sure we're controlling it. No reason your game should be over 2 hours and 15 minutes or anything. Obviously, if you go to extra innings, it's a little different. But really, just again, trying to control that flow as much. And then we're also trying to minimize risk and injury. You'll hear me a lot tonight, basically just saying, hey, know the age. Know what age you're doing. How you umpire a game at 9-year-olds is going to be a lot of different than how you umpire a game at a 15-year-old. So when it comes to minimizing risk, we just really want to make sure that everyone's safe. We're dealing with hard balls and we're dealing with metal bats and everything. So we want to try to help as much as we can possible to minimize risk for ourselves, but also for the players and for the coaches and anybody else that is on the field with it too as well. Really important here. So again, going back to you can use these tools in your whole career. If it's college, if it's jobs, anything like that, you can really use. Making a first impression is really important. So what we mean by that is when you get to the field, we really want to make sure you're making a really good first impression on those coaches, on those fans, and on those players too as well. Specifically with the coaches, because that's who you're going to interact the most with. But of course, everybody. So typically, what I like to do when I go to a field is I'll go to the field and I'll go find the head coaches and I'll introduce myself to both those coaches. I'll go, "Hey, coach, how's it going? My name's Taylor Voigt. I'm going to be the umpire for you today." And then usually we'll get into a bit, but I'll say, "Hey, we'll have our pregame meeting in about 5 minutes or so." You're going to shake their hand, make eye contact, be in a friendly manner. All of those are pretty easy to do, right? Those will just set the standard or set the stage for you to gain that respect and gain that kind of, just positive reinforcement with those coaches, kind of building that relationship a little bit with it too as well. So first impression, really big. On the contrary, right? If you show up and you're all kind of lackadaisical, you don't yourself to the coaches, you kind of come off as a little bit I like to use the word crotchety a lot, or just not in a good mood. The standard just that's a little weird, right? It just opens the door for a lot of situations that maybe we don't want to be a part of. So making a good first impression is really going to help you succeed as an umpire and help you succeed in that game that you are officiating at the time. So, but again, using this, on an interview, using it when you're doing a college, if you're doing a college interview or any type of situation you have, making a first impression, I would say, is a very important thing. Arriving early to the game. So what I just talked about, 5 minutes pre-games, we want people to be there if they can 15 minutes early. And when I say 15 minutes early, we want you to be at least in the parking lot 15 minutes early. So you don't have to be on the field or anything like that, but be in the parking lot 15 minutes early, get dressed in about 5 minutes, and then you can be on the field ready to go 10 minutes beforehand. That will give you enough time to survey the field, make sure, what the out of bounds are, make sure all the bases are intact, get to know the teams a little bit. Really gives you that good opportunity with it too as well. Then, like I said before, you want to have your pregame conference, and we'll talk about the pregame conference here coming up. But you want to try to have your pregame conference with the coaches at home plate 5 minutes before game time. That will allow you to obviously go through your whole pregame conference, give the home team time to warm up in the field. Boom, you're starting right at the game time. So if it's 6 o'clock, you're doing your pregame conference at 5:55. Boom, you're ready to go. You're controlling that flow to start and trying to move things along that way too as well. Again, going back to it, kind of the other side of it, if we have umpires that show up late, game starts late, things like that, bad first impression, you're not coming prepared, everything like that. I will say, I get it. The games we have sometimes are hard to get to, and they're at 6 o'clock and everything. And so I just say try to be there 15 minutes. Yeah, if they're there 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, totally fine. We get that things come up and you can't be there on time, but again, try to get there 15 minutes early to the game as much as possible too as well. Dress code. So dress code here, this is a form that is on Arbiter. So we will go over this, and then Jordan will show you on Arbiter for the Wheelhouse guys where this is. And I can also send this out to anybody who wants this too as well. But for dress code, for Wheelhouse umpires, you'll get a traveling shirt from us. So it's going to be either dark or black blue. It's got a little collar on it. Super nice and everything. For pants, so kind of skipping a couple sections here. Typically with pants, what I always tell people is go to Goodwill, go to Savers, find some $15 dress pants. They're dark gray charcoal. They're, you know, I don't want to call them like wool, but they kind of look a little nicer than sweatpants and things. You can buy them for very cheap. Make sure they have belt loops on them too as well, so you can fit your ball bag on it too. So go to that. Chris says Target's a good one. Perfect. Go wherever you need to go for something inexpensive. We typically don't like umpires to wear shorts, and then we typically don't like them to have really tight pants on because you got to remember, right? You got to put your shin pads underneath your pants. And so make sure you have enough room. So those dress pants are typically big enough where you can do that. If you really get into it and you're like, hey, I want to do this for years and years, let me know. I can give you some contacts on some places to find really good umpire pants that will last you 5, 10 years. But if you're starting up, you're like, hey, I don't want to spend a ton of money. Buy those at Goodwill, Savers, Target, wherever you need to do pretty easy.
Hey Tay, real quick.
Yeah.
Do you want our shin pads and everything to be under our pants all the time?
Yes.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to clarify on that because I wore them under and over
Sure.
last year, depending on like just the right?
For
The
sure.
situation, so you
Yeah.
want them under the whole time.
Under if you can, yeah, I would say. So if we go to the next section here, so any umpire you're going to see, right, it just looks more professional. So we have shin pads that are sticking out and things. It's not the best look. I'm not going to say like I care. I'm not the fashion police here or anything like that.
No, right.
But I would just say from a professionalism, the way you want to dress, like, yeah, under the pants would just be for a role. And then you can see here, like a lot of these guys, they're a little baggier of pants. So you just got to make sure those shin pads fit underneath it too as well. So,
Got it.
yep.
Perfect. Thanks, Tay.
Yeah, no problem. Other things too as well. So I'm less concerned about some of this other stuff here, but make sure your shoes are black or a dark color. Basically, just don't have any neon shoes out there for the most part. Wheelhouse guys, you'll get a ball bag from us that's either gray or black for the most part. Black again, or something dark colored for the belt. And then the only thing I'll say with hats, again, same thing, just make sure it's a dark color. Biggest thing with hats is make sure they are not your team's hat or anything like that. So, and why I say that is, let's say you're a guy that goes to Eastridge High School or you play for Eastridge and you're going to want to wear your Eastridge baseball cap. If you go to a game that's, Eastridge versus Matamidi, that coach that's on the Matamidi side is going to be like, oh crap, this guy has an Eastridge hat on. He's, umpiring an Eastridge game here. He's probably going to be biased towards Eastridge just because he goes there and stuff. So we want to take any of that reason of doubt out as much as possible. So try to wear a non-descriptive hat that's not like your baseball cap or anything. I'm okay with like if it's a Twins cap. We will be having hats that we can buy from us, and so we'll get we're on back order right now a little bit, but we'll make sure to let everyone know when those are happening. But just
Hey,
try
Tay.
that maybe be a dark something like that too as well.
Hey
Yeah,
Tay, really quick question too. So I have a Wheelhouse hat from last year, and
perfect.
so it's got the short brim, right? So it's
Yes.
perfect that way. But it's easier for me to wear it backwards and then have a mask in front.
Yeah.
on that. Is that okay? Like if I have the bill in the back rather than the front?
Yeah, I would say preference be forward. I'm not a huge, stickler for that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so not the end of the world. Again, same thing professional wise, better to be have it on front, but if you have to have it on backwards, I know a lot of times we have just regular ball caps, and with
Yep.
the long brims, it's really hard to fit over a mask. So totally
Right.
understand that too.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I was cool with that. So
Yeah,
thank
for
you.
sure. Cool. Okay. Um, So dress code here. So like I said, these are Major League umpires, right? So we're not going to say, hey, you need to look exactly like a Major League umpire, but I think this is definitely something that we should strive to look like whenever we can possible. Again, it's all about just impressions, looking the part, acting the part too, as well is really going to show coaches that you know what you're doing and that you should be there, and it's really going to impress them a lot, and really set you up for success when it comes to that. Biggest thing with this one, just make sure you're wearing clean stuff, right? Like we don't want you to go do a game and you get all dust over it and then you wear it at the same time next time. Use some water to wash it off if you have to, anything like that. Make sure your shirt is tucked in. That one, I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little bit of a stickler for that one, but just make sure your shirts are tucked in. It's gonna look really nice with that one. Hats on straight. Try to again stay away from any off-color stuff and accessories. Pretty easy that way. And at the end of the day, right, we just don't look like a scrub, right? Like if you look like you just got rolled out of bed and you don't want to be there, kind of a tough look, I'll be honest. So just try your best to look like the part. That is the easiest thing to do as an umpire is to look the part. So let's try to get that part first as much as we can, and looking as best as possible with it. So, any questions on dress code at all we have here? Cool. All right. I forgot to mention, we have some test questions at each end of the section, so make sure you're listening. It can look really good if you get them right. Other things for equipment wise that I like to have. So, Wheelhouse guys and most of the other umpires, you'll get a brush and a clicker. So, these things on the right here, you'll already get. Rules. So rules, we'll talk about where we can find those and everything like that. Typically these days, this rule printout I feel like is a little outdated, but I will say, some of the situations you may get into where you have to look up the rules at the game, or you want the coaches to want you to look up a rule. Typically, if you could do it on your phone, great. Sometimes we have spotty service, just depending on the, locations that we're at. So I would say hard copy rules is sometimes really nice because you don't have to wait for it to load on your phone, anything like that. You can just have the rules printed out. Boom, good to go at that point. The next two, so coin and pen, these are going to be if you're doing tournament games. So for pool play games and tournaments, that's games usually on a Friday and a Saturday night. You will need a coin so you can flip at determining who's the home and away team for those tournaments. And then for pens, you'll have to report your scores and the pitch counts too as well. So just making sure you have that too as well. And then the last two, right? It's the summertime, so you're going to be probably hot and it's going to be dry sometimes. So just making sure that you bring lots of water. And then for sunglasses, I don't wear sunglasses. Usually your brim of your hat can be pretty good, but I'm not. You can wear sunglasses if you really want to. The only thing I would say about sunglasses specifically is make sure you have sunglasses that aren't super reflective. So obviously there's those Oakley ones that, are like this and boom, they flash right in you. Think about it from a pitcher's perspective, right? Like we don't want to have glasses that are super bright and reflective that could possibly distract them or anything like that. So we just want to make sure that we're doing those. So again, wear sunglasses if you want, but just make sure they're not a distraction or too much of a reflection at that point too as well. Cool. And then the last part, so again, you're going to hear this a lot from me tonight, is one big thing with professionalism is making sure that we're hustling every play. You can throw out everything else that I talk about today, but if there's one thing that you take away, it's if you can hustle to get in the best position, you're going to have the best result and you're going to look like the best umpire. So that's again, getting out from the catcher, getting in the right position, really selling those calls as much as we can as possible. That is the one thing that you can do that I think sets you apart as an umpire and helps people succeed is hustling as much as you can on those positions. The other thing is speaking firmly, right? Being confident with your calls. A lot of first year umpires, and this is not a knock against anyone, but we have some tentativeness, right? Like it is a tough thing to do sometimes. So if you can be firm and confident in those calls, that coach is going to believe you just that much more, and it's really going to have a good presence on those two as well. And then being decisive, right? A lot of times we'll have umpires that will be like, he's safe. I mean, he's out, like, and they get all flustered and things, which again, totally get it. It just happens with new umpiring and it's a tough thing to do. But if you can be really good, you're just like, he's safe or, he's out, just really sell those calls home as much as possible. That's really going to help you set apart. And I would say it's one of the things that I will talk to a lot of umpires about, and I notice it the most. So if you can really push those things through, really going to look good, really going to help you as a successful umpire too as well. I always put this clip up because I always think it's the funniest thing in the entire world. Let's see if it pulls it. There you go. So this is basically, hey, don't do this. This is a not to do from an umpire's perspective. So, we got our umpire here, and already right out the gate, you can just tell doesn't look like he's want to be there, right? He's got his hands on his hip here. He's kind of just hanging out. This looks like a high school game, I'm gonna be honest. If you think I'm hard at observing, the high school officials and high school observers are really tough. So the fact that this guy is doing this at a high school game is kind of crazy. So, but you can see here, right? Hands on his hip, ball comes in. He's not even moving. He's not getting into position. He's not getting into what we call the slot, which we'll talk about too as well tonight. But he's just not doing it. He's like, hey, oh, here you go, catcher. Give you the ball. I'm just gonna stand here, not really do much, just kind of hang out and do that. Um, Bad luck, I'll say. I always say if I see an umpire doing this, it's going to be tough. We're probably going to have a conversation. So try your best to not do that whenever possible. Really just going to help you know, help you as an umpire and everything too as well. So, okay, where did my slides just go? There we go. Cool. So again, just being professional with it. Act like you want to be there, right? I know sometimes you don't want to, and then sometimes we're in it for the pay, and I totally get that. But just act like you want to be there. Try your best. That is the bare minimum, and that is all we can ask for. And then I think that's a good one too. So, and then last thing I'll just say about professionalism. So these are just kind of some, be firm, right? Don't be overbearing. Be courteous, not interrogating. Positive, not rude. Confident, never cocky. Calm and not alert. The two I would say I see a lot of umpires struggle with, and this is a good thing to work on. The first one here is going to be this bottom one, right? Be calm but not alert. So what I mean by that is there will probably be some situations you'll have this year that are going to be a little high tense, right? You got a tough game, maybe it's a close game, something like that. If you can keep yourself to be calm and have a level head, it's going to help you make those decisions a lot easier on close plays, on getting rules correct, everything that you do there. So, and that will come with experience. So the more games you do, the easier it is to, still be calm and still be in it in those situations. One story I always like to tell, and I told this on the Saturday one too as well, because I'm not perfect, right? I'm an umpire that's been umpiring for about 12 years, but I've had my fair share of mistakes and I still think about them, but they are what made me into a better umpire. So I was doing a club baseball tournament over at Century College, and I remember this exactly. Can't remember who I was my base umpire, but it was a really close game throughout the whole game. And we get to the bottom of the seventh inning. So it's the last inning, and we get into this, basically from the movie situation. So we got bottom of the seventh, 2 outs, 3-2 count, bases loaded, tie game. Home team is at bat right now. So it's like, hey, this is an intense situation. And my whole time, I'm like, okay, Taylor, you can't mess this up. You can't mess this up, which I should not be thinking. Again, you just want to do that. So pitcher goes to pitch it. In my head already, I'm thinking strike, right? Like I'm thinking like, holy crap, this is going to come in too with it. And ball comes in and it's high. And I'm like, crap. So I'm already like about to call a strike and I fumble the bag with it. And eventually I'm like, strike. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was not a strike. So I had to call time right away. And I'm like, I called a strike, but that should have been ball four. Batter take his base, and the home team ended up winning the game. I got the call right. That's all that matters at the end of the day. We got the call right. But obviously the other team's upset. Putting myself in a bad situation because I wasn't staying calm. I didn't try to let the play all the way follow all the way through with it. So just be really important with that to be calm as much as you can be possible to keep a level head so you can make those good decisions with it too as well. The other one I would say is this second from the bottom here, so confidence, right? Again, we know we have a lot of umpires. You're going to be, if you're a 13-year-old umpire or a 14-year-old umpire and you're having to deal with coaches that are adults, we get it. It's going to be tough sometimes. It's hard to be confident. It's hard to really have a good presence out there. So one of the things you're probably going to struggle with to start the season is that. But just let it know if you are, prepared for the game, if you know the rules, that's just going to help in your confidence overall and help you make those calls as much as possible with it. So again, it comes with experience, it comes with time, but my hope is today, and by the time this is over on Thursday, you're going to be able to have that confidence to go out there on the field and call the best game that you can possible to as an umpire as well. So just,
And Tay, like I will
yeah,
just throw my 2 cents out there for
of
from
course.
last year when I was doing it, and there was a situation with whether it's going to apply this year to everybody or not, but I had a situation where I called a strike three on a kid,
Yep.
and a younger kid, right, 10 or 11-year old, and I called strike three, which it was strike
Yep.
three, no doubt about it, and the coach walked by me and said, that kid's gonna think about that now for the next week. And I'm like, I mean, you almost have to have a shield in front of you. Like I know we wear pads and I think that
Yeah.
pad is our shield, right? And but there's those situations that you're gonna have where a coach is gonna say that to you and just walk by you and keep going. And so you have to have that thick skin just in that moment.
Yep. And a really good point, Chris. I think none of this is to scare you guys, right? Like, I'm going to talk about this in a bit, but being an umpire that I am, I've had very few situations. I would say 99.9% of the games that we have are, we've have really good umpires and they do a really good job and they have no issues with it too as well. So, really good points. But, these are just things to help you if those situations do occur to help you with those, and what you need to do with it too as well. But, yeah, I think it's, if you can call a good game and you can do what you need to do, shouldn't have any issues throughout the season. And I will say too, a lot of the leagues have put a really good emphasis on sportsmanship. So just know that, a lot of the coaches they're really nice guys. All the players are really nice. At the end of the day, we're talking baseball here, right? Everyone's having fun. You're going to be outside in good weather and play one of the best games that's ever been created too as well. So know those things, but we want to just prepare you as much as possible. We're trying not to scare you. But just, know that we have some of these situations that occur with it too as well. So appreciate it, Chris. And then just last slide here, blending into the background, right? Like we never want to be as an umpire somebody that determines the outcome of the game, and we never want to be the center of attention. Your goal as an umpire is to basically blend in, and at the end of the game, the hopefully the fans and parents and coaches are like, "Hey, that umpire did really good," and just goes home. You never want to be that center of attention or anything like that. So again, conducting yourself as a spectator to the attention. Basically, you're watching the game and you're just enforcing the rules, right? Like you don't determine if a kid gets a hit or a home run or anything like that. That's up to them. So really, you're just spectating it and then just calling it according to the rules. Making sure we're courteous to the coaches, right? Like we talked about earlier, sometimes we have bad days, and sometimes we have situations where we just want to blow off some steam and everything. I will tell you right now, it's not a place to do it on the baseball field. If we get into tense situations and we are in a bad attitude, the coach is probably also going to have a bad attitude towards us, and it just creates a little bit of a conflict with it. And then we'll talk about how to deal with coaches and how to deal with that. But of course, we want to keep our discussions brief and business-like. So we don't want to get personal at all or anything with coaches or with players. We want to try to, try to keep things as level and kind of smooth as possible with it. All right, question time. I apologize. I gave out candy at the Saturday session, but I can't give out candy through the Zoom here. So apologies. So questions here. If anyone can answer this, feel free to come off mute. How early should you arrive to the field location?
15
10
minutes.
early.
Anyone other than Chris? Sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
What I think I heard, what, 15 minutes? Is that what I heard?
15 minutes.
Perfect. 15 minutes. Beautiful. How early should you be dressed and ready to go?
10 minutes.
Beautiful. And then how early should we be at our pregame conference?
5 minutes.
Beautiful. You guys were in sync there. It was perfect. Beautiful job. Yes, just stressing that again. 15 minutes in the field if we can, 10 minutes be dressed and ready to go. And then we want to try to be our pregame conference at 5 minutes too as well. The last thing I want to happen is I get a call from a coach saying, "Where's my umpire?" Try to be proactive with your communication. If you're going to be late, let us know. We can reach out to the coach and say, hey, Chris is going to be late to his game. So, try to do as much as possible, but we get stuff happens. And then make sure you just show up. We don't want to have no shows, obviously, too, as well. So, okay, I'll stop there. Any questions on professionalism that anyone wants to go over? Anything that we just covered? Gives me a good time to drink my water too. Beautiful. All right, we'll move on.
Taylor,
Yes, Dennis.
good evening. I have a question. It's not really, it's a scenario question. Should I save that for later?
Go for it. I'm all ears.
Okay. I ran into a situation last summer where um, I signed up for one game
Okay.
and had to scoot right after that game, but they had scheduled a doubleheader unbeknownst to me, and I think unbeknownst to the admin.
Probably.
Yeah. What is the what's the appropriate professional thing to do in that scenario if you think you have one game and they have a doubleheader scheduled?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I would say, so in your case, Chris, sorry, Dennis, you said you had a game somewhere else afterwards.
I just had plans after the
Got it.
after
Oh,
the
I see what you're saying. Got it. Yeah, I would say it's obviously, it's great if you could do it, but we're never going to expect anyone to do it, especially if you have plans or something else going on too. I would just say, hey, did you reach out to Wheelhouse to say that you had a doubleheader, or did you verify your games to say that you had an umpire for both of these games? You'll hear me a lot tonight say, hey, putting it on the coach, because majority of the times they didn't reach out to us, they didn't verify their schedule, so the responsibility is not on you as an umpire because they messed up. It's on them at that point too as well. So I think you could respectfully just be like, hey, I only saw one game on the schedule. I really apologize. I can't stay for another one. If you want to try to call Wheelhouse to see if they can find somebody quickly, but I don't ever expect anyone to stay if, especially like you said, if you have plans or something else going on afterwards as well.
copy that. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
So Taylor, if you want to do the game, would you,
Do
if you're
it.
able to do the game,
Yeah.
would you do,
Hey,
tell
I have
them,
a
okay, I'll do
question.
the game and then get back with you to tell them that you did the game?
Yeah. 1 second, William. Yep, Pat. So I would say if you do it, go ahead and do the game and then just let us know. And then what we can do is just add it to your arbiter schedule and then you'll get paid for it. So a lot of times people will be like, hey, we have a doubleheader tonight, or we, want to play an extra game so that we don't have to, reschedule a rain out or something like that. So just let us know when that happens and then we'll just add it to the schedule. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. William, go ahead.
So I know this is kind of like I know they do this in like caddying for golf, but
Sure.
like when you start out, like as you progress and like the more years you go, do you start getting like higher pay?
Yes. Yeah, very good question. Yep. So all of our games for pay rates are going to be based on level and age. So we'll pay rates for our in-house and developmental programs. And then as you get into the traveling levels and you move up to the different ages and even into high school, the pay increases too as well. So to give you a example, and if Jordan's on here, he can probably answer better than I can. But let's say you're doing like a 9-year-old traveling game. That's going to be about $60 versus if you do like a 13, 14, or 15-year-old, that's going to be closer to $70 or $75 as well. So yeah, I would say it's a really good motivation, I would say, for a lot of umpires that, hey, the more you can progress, the more experience you can get, the more you can move up, the better games you're going to be able to do, and more money that you're going to make off those as well. So good
Said it
question.
perfect, Taylor.
What?
Also,
You said it
uh,
perfect. Yeah, so it's minimum $60 for traveling, 45 for in-house outside of a few exceptions. The older the age and the more we get paid, the more the umpires get paid.
Yep. Go ahead, William.
Oh, you just answered my question. I was just gonna ask how much for in-house games.
Yes. Yeah, I would say the only one that's a little different to German said in minimum is the second grade games. Those ones because it's only like an hour and 15 minutes. I think it's like 26 or something. But yeah, overall they're pretty good rates. Yeah, we always Jordan and I always say this like, your lowest you're gonna make in like an hourly rate is gonna be like $25. So if you think about it that way, right? If you're flipping burgers at McDonald's, you're making probably minimum wage is like $15 to $17, but you're making more and you could be outside during baseball. So not a bad gig in the summertime. Let me just say that. Cool. Any other questions on professionals? All really good questions. Appreciate you guys.
Um, you had mentioned earlier that it would be wise to bring some copy of the rule book,
Yes.
but most umpires nowadays just use it on their phones.
Yep.
Where would we be able to find an online copy of those rules?
So
We'll
Jordan will
talk about
go.
that a little bit later.
Yeah, Jordan will go through Arbiter. A lot of times you can just go to the league's website, but we have links on Arbiter to get you to that place too as well. So if you're with like a Wiper Lake or Hudson, they usually will just have it on their, if you type in like Hudson developmental baseball, they'll have the rules right there just on the website link too as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Cool. All right. All right, we'll keep moving here. Safety and liability. So for safety and liability, this is gonna be a pretty quick section. Don't have to write too much. Biggest thing is with equipment, we just want to make sure that they do not have jewelry or earrings on or anything like that. Make sure they're wearing the uniform as it's intended. So shirts tucked in, make sure their hats are straight. For 12-year-olds or younger, they have to wear molded spikes. So make sure that they're like the plastic ones on the bottom, and then metal spikes for 13 or older the ages. And then make sure that if there's anyone on the bases, so like if you have a third base or a first base coach that is under the age of 18, just make sure they're wearing a helmet, like a batting helmet, when they are out there. And really, all this is just to protect the safety of the players. When we're dealing with minors, so anybody that's under the age of 18, we wanted to make sure that they're protected because obviously, the coaches and sometimes the associations are liable for a lot of these things. So just make sure that they're being as safe as possible in those situations. For in-game ones, I'll talk about again pregame conference here coming up in a bit, but sometimes I'll discuss these things in my pregame conference just so that we're all on the same page and again protecting the safety of the players. So, biggest one you're going to see at the younger ages is you got a catcher that's too close to the batter. So you'll see it, a catcher gets really close and you're nervous that that batter is going to swing and he's going to hit that catcher. So what I'll do in that situation is just tell that catcher, hey, can you scoot back a little bit? So that you're not in the way of that batter swing. So be proactive if you can, especially at the younger age levels to do that. Make sure that the batter's box, so make sure the batter's in the batter's box before the pitch is thrown. Pretty obvious one there. Make sure they're in the on deck, correct on deck circle. So, at the bigger fields, you don't have to worry about it too much. They stay on their dugout. But if you're dealing with those smaller fields, make sure they're back. They're on just the back side of whoever is batting at that point in time. What I see a lot is making sure the players are not in the dugout entry. So you can see here in this picture, this kid is in the dugout. I've seen it happen before, right? You got a batter that's up to bat and he swings and fouls it off and it goes right into that, that dugout entrance there and a kid gets hit. And so, those fences are there for a reason. So we want to make sure that they stay behind those fences whenever possible. And then just make sure there's no bats or any weights or anything that are in that on deck circle. Same thing, seen it happen. You got a catcher that is trying to field a pop fly in foul territory, and maybe he, trips over that weight or he trips over that bat. So whenever possible, just make sure that they're getting that bat and that weight out of the way as much as you can. So
I think one other piece, Tay, that I saw last year was the on deck circle. They weren't having their helmet on in the on deck at
yeah,
that point too.
yeah,
So just making sure that of course, like having the kids behind the fence, but like making sure that they have their helmet on even on
yes,
the on deck circle. So
yep.
yeah.
Yep, good one too as well. There's some other rules too where like you can technically only have two guys warming up for batting. So like I know some guys will or some teams will have their whole team out and batting out front. I'm not too worried about those kind of things, but again, we're just trying to protect the safety of the players. Sometimes, again, knowing the age, right? Know the age. You got a 9-year-old kid that just doesn't know any better. So we want to try to help them out as much as possible. The coaches are going to try their best, but they're dealing with 3 coaches or 4 coaches, and they have 12 kids that are trying to worry about. So just try your best to help them out whenever possible, so that we don't have any injuries or anyone getting any accidents during the game. Pretty quick section there, but any questions on that at all? Perfect. All right, we'll keep moving here. All right. This is probably the section that we get the most amount of questions, because obviously there is a stigma with it. So baseball issues, ejections, right? I'm gonna start, and I always start this at every single training that we do, just to preface with everybody with this too as well. I get my numbers wrong every single time, so I just use averages at this point. Last year for Wheelhouse umpires, we did 5,000 games. In the span of 5,000 games, we had 10 or less than 10 ejections. If you do the math on that, for any of you math whizzes, I don't have my calculator here. That is a percent of a percent. So again, what I'm basically trying to get through to people here is majority of people that are on this call and majority of our umpires will not have any issues with ejections and won't even come close to having with it too as well. Like I said before, leagues, associations, us as umpires have tried to get it where we are proactively reaching out to these coaches so that we don't have these issues. And we're trying to protect umpires as much as we can possible. So I know there's a stigma with umping where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to deal with yelling coaches and players are all upset and things. If you are a good umpire and you are proactive and you know the rules and you make the right calls or you are trying to make the right calls, you shouldn't have any issues with ejections or anything like that. In my career, I have had less than 10 ejections. Same thing. I think I've had like 6 or 7, and I've been doing this for 12 years. I've done over 600 games. So same thing, right? Percentages there. It's a very small amount. But we want to make sure that we are preparing our umpires as best as possible if those situations do arise. But also, we want to give you those tools to help mitigate or help get away from those situations. So that's what this whole section is going to be about, is basically how do we help you guys out as much as possible so that we don't have to, you know, get to that level where we have to get to an ejection with it too as well. So just prefacing that. If you do have questions, let's just wait till the end on them too as well. I'll try to get through the section as quickly as possible with it, but just try to work through that piece. This is the one section I just want to get through, and we can go through it as well. So ejections, all players, coaches, spectators to behave in a manner that reflects positive fun associated with game of baseball, sportsmanship, right? That's basically the definition there. It is a sport that, means nothing at the end of the day. And so we want people to act positively and have fun while they're doing it. Some things that would constitute unsportsmanlike would be verbal abuse, physical aggression, tantrum acts, argument, judgment calls, profanity. Obviously, verbal abuse, right? If you have a coach that's yelling at you, if you have a coach that is, talking and arguing judgment calls, that is something that could be grounds for an ejection. Physical aggression. I've only heard of it once, never seen it once. But obviously, if that is a coach that makes contact with you, we'll talk about what levels you would do a warning and what levels of ejection. Physical aggression, of course, if a coach touches you in any way, that is an automatic ejection. Tantrum-like acts. I've seen coaches act like 5-year-olds, and nobody loves that, but it happens. So if we have tantrum-like acts, they're stomping their feet, they're doing something they shouldn't be. That is something that could be a grounds for an ejection. Talked about argument calls. So, of course, they can come up to you as a umpire and say, hey, Dennis, what did you see on third base there? I thought he got under the tag. What did you see on that point? So if they come up to you in a respectful manner and say, asking you questions, they have every right to do those things. As soon as they come up to you and say, Dennis, how did you miss that call at first base? That was obviously safe. I don't know why you called that out. Again, they're arguing those judgment calls. Same thing. We can use tools and like, we could use a warning in that one. And then obviously profanity. If they drop the F-bomb, if they drop the S-bomb, anything like that, typically those are things that I would eject right on the spot. Again, we got kids, we got parents. That type of language just isn't made for the sport of baseball. It may be in the major leagues. If you watch a major league game or if you hear it, there's a lot of swearing. But again, we're dealing with youth. We're talking with younger umpires or younger players and things. So we try to that. And then typically what I say with profanity on where that line is with profanity. If you wouldn't say it to your grandma, it's probably a swear. So if you feel like damn is a profanity, you could use that. But, if it's something where is that borderline, just say, if I would say that to my grandma, it's probably fine. If I wouldn't say it, probably is a use of profanity at that point too as well. So all things that we can do from an ejections perspective. We'll talk about the three sections here. So we got how we're going to deal with coaches, how we're going to deal with players, and how we're going to deal with spectators too as well. So coaches, biggest thing with this is we only deal with the head coach. So there's going to be assistant coaches, there's going to be a scorekeeper, things like that. We are only going to communicate to that head coach. The assistant coaches and that scorekeeper are just there to help support the team. That head coach is that main point of contact that we're going to work with throughout the game. Again, we talked about they're only allowed to talk through rule discrepancies and ask about those judgment calls, but just making sure that they're doing it in a respectful manner. Anytime that they get a bad tone with you or anything like that, that's when it starts to get out of line. Typically with coaches, I will administer a warning first for a lot of these situations. And how I would do that is, again, we don't want to, make the situation rise more than it should be at that point. So what we will do is I'll say, hey, coach, you're starting to argue in judgment calls, or you're starting to get out of line a little bit. If you continue with this, you may be asked to leave the game. So biggest thing with that, I don't like to use the word ejection. I don't like to be, you're going to be thrown out of here. Like things that are like direct words, sometimes can be, put coaches into a little defensive manner and things. So let's try to be very soft, but still get the point across when we're talking to these coaches. And we want to tell them basically, here's what you did. Here's what was going to happen if you continue with this. So we're giving that cause and effect, right? We're saying you did this. If you do it again, this is what's going to happen. So I would say again, hey, coach, you're getting out of line from a sportsmanship perspective. You aren't allowed to argue judgment calls. If you continue with this behavior, you will be asked to leave the facility. Put it on that one too as well.
Hey Taylor, are we
Yeah.
okay with like just pulling that coach aside so that the team doesn't have to hear it or anybody else has to hear it, spectators, whoever, and just be like, hey, this is where we're at right now, and this is the situation, right?
Yes. Yep. I would go up to the coach and get them just in a secluded spot and just be
Yep.
with them. Like, don't make a big scene of it, right? You don't have to yell at
Right.
the coach across or something. Again, get out of all those situations that will kind of heighten that situation up. We talked about again, you want to be the background. You don't want to make a scene for yourself. So, yeah, it's a really good point. Chris just saying like, hey, take them aside, say it in a respectful, very calm manner. But still at the same time, we want to make sure we get the point across and then that coach understands what you are saying to them at that point as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Biggest thing with ejections, and we'll talk about this for both coaches and spectators. If you do end up having an ejection, the coach has to leave the sports complex. So what I mean by that is if you were over at M Fairview or Bielenberg or Healthies, whatever you call it, you know the confines of that complex, right? Like it goes all the way down the field, everything like that. They have to leave that sports complex. They can't just go to the bench. They can't, go sit with the parents or anything like that where they could still, cause some issues. They do have to leave that complex. In a situation that they don't, you can go to whoever the new head coach is and say, hey, if that coach does not leave the field, and the same thing will happen with fans. But if you don't have that coach leave the stands, we're going to have to forfeit the game for your team. So you're putting it on that coach, right? You're putting it on them to say, again, if you don't do this, this is what will happen. So really, you're just being very clear with what those consequences are. And you're putting it on them to say, if you don't do this, this is what the reaction is. So giving them all that responsibility and all of those duties too as well. So there's that. So those coaches. Players are going to be a little different. So again, I sound like a broken record at this point. Know the age, right? With how we interact with kids that are 9-year-olds is going to be different than 15-year-olds. A 9-year-old is not going to know as much, and we're probably going to give them a little more benefit of the doubt than we are with a 15-year-old that probably knows what he's doing and probably realizes that he's not doing something that's correct. So know that portion as much as possible with it. Big thing with players. So if you have a player that has an issue, if they, argue a judgment call, if they go to anywhere where you feel like the grounds of a warning, you have to communicate it with the head coach. So make sure that that head coach is on the page, same page as you are. And what I would do is I'd go to the coach and say, "Hey, coach, number three is, they're arguing calls. They've been doing this all game. Can you please talk to that? If you please talk to that player and make sure that they don't continue it. If they continue it, they may be asked to leave, to not play in this game anymore at that point." So again, you're putting it on the coach to say, "Coach, this is what's going to happen with that player if they don't, behave themselves or if they continue to show that behavior or be unsportsmanlike." So you put it on them and they have to deal with it at that point. If the same thing happens again and you have to do an ejection, you can go back to the coach and say, "Coach, I told you what was going to happen with number three if they did not decide to, if they decide to continue with this behavior." So obviously they continued, so now they have to leave the game at that point. Little different than we do with coaches than we do with players. Because they're under the age of 18, right, they're minors. All they have to do is stay on the bench at that point. So make sure that they're on the bench, make sure that they're staying, respectful of the game, and then they cannot re-enter. Another key thing too as well, and we'll say it's in the rules, and if it ever happens, just confirm with the coaches. But if you're batting the whole lineup, so if it's all, 12, 13 players, whatever it is, it's just an automatic out when that player comes up. So if they're fourth in the batting order and they get ejected, anytime that player comes up again, they will be an automatic out for that portion of it. So some players that too as well. I'll go back to that one. Okay. And then the last one is going to be spectators. So spectators is going to be anyone that's a fan that's not either on the field or it's a coach that's in the dugouts. Another big thing with the spectators is we do not communicate or we do not talk to spectators. The last thing I want to see happen is an umpire start arguing with a fan. Fans can get pretty unruly sometimes if you ever do have these situations. So same thing with this situation. If a fan, rises to a level where we feel like we need to warn them, we're going to go to the coach at that point. We're going to go to the coach and say, "Hey, coach, one of your fans down in left field, or the left field line, I think they have a blue hat on. They're being very unsportsmanlike. They are, arguing calls. They're disrupting the game, doing different things that just aren't, what we need here in baseball. Can you please go talk to them and say if they continue with this behavior, then they're going to be asked to leave the facility at that point." So you're not in it and you're not communicating with that spectator. You're again going to the coach, that head coach, and saying you need to deal with this. If you do not, this is what's going to happen at that point. Same thing with the coaches. If they do get ejected, they will have to leave the facility too as well. So just make sure they're getting away so they're away from that situation. And then one thing I would say about this is same thing with, we talked about with, a head coach. So if that fan continues to be unruly, will not leave the facility, anything like that, I'm going to go to the head coach and say, "Coach, you have to deal with this situation. If you do not, we're going to have to forfeit the game on your behalf at that point." So, you just want to make sure we use the tools that we have. Not that it ever should get to that level. Usually they're pretty good once you do have those ejections, but just know that you have the power in a lot of those situations, and hopefully use it to handle as much as possible and use it to basically deal with any of the things that aren't happening that you want to happen to as well with it. So, okay. I'll stop there. Any questions on players or spectators or fans?
So you said that you deal only with the head coach,
Yes.
but if the head coach isn't there 5 minutes before the game for the pregame conference, could you talk to the assistant coach in that case?
Yeah, really good question. So I actually have a really good story. I'm glad you brought this up, Ethan. Thank you. So I had a situation where, so let me preface to answer your question first, and I'll tell the story. So yes, you can have the assistant coach that is not there. I would say when that head coach arrives, go to that head coach and introduce yourself, and then kind of go over just a quick summary of what you covered in that pregame conference. You want to make sure that that head coach is on the same page as everybody else. I don't expect, and it usually doesn't happen, where the assistant coach is like, "Hey, Ethan, the umpire went through A, B, C, D, so make sure you're following this." Like they don't do that, right? So we want to make sure that we just connect with that head coach when they do come. But if you are having your pregame conference, you could just have that assistant coach just join at that point as well. Um, One thing that I will say, so good question or story that I have. I was doing a state tournament game. I think it was like 12-year-olds or something like that, over at Bloomington. And I said, "Hey, can I get the head coaches coming here?" Had both of the what I thought was the head coaches. And one of the rules that I do, especially at the 12-year-olds, is I say, okay, for balk situations, right? If we have a balk, if it's something that doesn't affect the play, if it's something that, is very small, we're going to warn that pitcher first, and then we're going to do a balk after that. Uh, and if it's a balk where they throw somebody out, we're going to call balk right away. So game gets playing, we're going on, doing what we need to do. Kid moves his shoulders a little bit. I call time, I give him a warning and say, hey, got to make sure your shoulders are, square or everything like that. And this guy comes out of the dugouts and he's like, what the heck? That's a balk. You got to call a balk right away. And I go, like, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm the head coach. And I go, Coach, why were you not at the pregame conference? And he's like, well, I was working with my kids, and so I had my assistant coach. And I was like, Coach, like we discussed this in the pregame conference that, we weren't going to call box on those things, and we're getting a warning first. So really making sure that head coach is there, because you can get run into some situations where, again, not everyone's on the same page. You didn't agree upon all the rules, so it just kind of creates a little bit of that confusion and things as well. So, Ethan, good question as well with that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Take a break.
Yeah, let's do it. Cool. Okay. We will take a break here real quick. I still have a little bit to go on the ejection part of it, but right here at 7:34, we'll take a break. When we come back, so we'll give everyone till 7:40, so 7:40. When we come back, Jordan is going to go over arbiter for this piece. So if you are a White Bear Lake or you are a Hudson umpire, it usually takes about 10 minutes or so. So we'll probably be like 7:50 that will start back up, or 7:55. But if you are a Wheelhouse guy, make sure you're back here by 7:40. Really important thing to do with the arbiter as well. So take a break. Let me know if you need anything. I'll be on here still for questions if anyone wants to do that too as well. Otherwise, yeah, 7:40, we'll be back. Mason, there will not be a makeup, but we're going to record this whole thing, which we are right now, and I will be posting it to YouTube. So you can watch the second half on YouTube as well.
All right, so I was an umpire last year, and I
Yep.
think I remember this. But if we eject a coach or a spectator and they like refuse to leave, then should we call you guys?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a bit, but yes, if you have any issues, or you feel like you're in an unsafe environment, please call us and we will help you out as much as we can, Lincoln. Use the tools that you can, but obviously there gets to a point where sometimes it doesn't happen. I've only had it happen once in my entire career where I've had an umpire do that where they, but I would say at any point, if you feel like you're unsafe, you can leave the field. Don't feel like you have to continue with any of that, some of those situations, because it can, if it ever gets to that point, we want to make sure that you're in a good spot and in a safe spot too as well.
Thank you.
In different location. All right, let's talk about arbiter. Get to my correct screen for arbiter. This is going to be for all Wheelhouse umpires, as we are the only one that uses the system. White Bear and Hudson and other groups most likely don't. So you can disregard this if you are within one of those groups. I'm sharing my screen, Taylor. If you want to just let me know if there's anything in the chat.
Yep, we'll do.
Um, so here's Arbiter. Everybody's gotten a login to Arbiter. If you have not seen anything via email, please send us a text, email, however you want to reach out to us. We'll get that taken care of. Everybody needs to be on Arbiter because this is the main spot to get information. Here is what you'll look like when you log in. It's just a dashboard. Big thing is it shows your upcoming schedule. I just have some fake games. Actually, that's not a fake game, but somebody needs to take it from me. So it'll just show your upcoming schedule. It's nice. Some of these things you won't see. I ref high school basketball, so that's why some of this information is on here. You will just most likely have Wheelhouse umpires if you only officiate for us. So nothing crazy here. One call out. We do nothing from a pay perspective with Arbiter. Okay. We do direct deposit through our own banking system. I use some information from Arbiter, but we do not use Arbiter Pay at all. So you can disregard any of that. If you have any questions on payment, we'll cover a little bit of it here, but you can also reach out to me and I can explain anything from timing wise to just like if you haven't provided a bank account your information yet. From there, we're going to go to schedule. So schedule is going to be pretty important. So it's calendar view and self-assign are the two things that you'll need. It'll show you all of your future games. The biggest thing is understanding like date, time, big one, and then the age and level. So for example, it's traveling would be the sport or also like developmental. So it gives you a better understanding what this game is. This would be 13 single A. This would be 9 AAA. This that'll also help dictate what your fees are going to be, what you make. That also includes the site, the home team, the away team, and then how much you're going to make. Okay. There's also in addition actions at the end, so you can see when games were put on your schedule. So this one was for the training on Saturday, and then I just put this one on my schedule, so you can see when you've got the game on your schedule. So it's a good point of reference. We can see a similar view when we do our assigning, so we can tell when things are taken off. Okay. Other option, this is under list view. You can also go by day, by week, by month is probably the next most important. So I can see I've got a game coming up here on a Thursday, and then this one's going to be on a Sunday. Okay. Another thing under list view, and I don't have it shown here. When we give you a game, so Taylor will assign tournament games this way. You might have changes to games. If like the time changed, date changed, if Scott might put you on a game and he just publishes and doesn't accept it for you. Right here under actions, there'll be a green and then a red check mark. Okay. Green means you're good, you're confirmed for the game. Red means you can't do the game. Okay. All you need to do is click it and then click submit, and then you're good to go. The game is on your schedule, and it is yours to umpire. If you hit the X button, it means you're declining the game, and that will it'll ask for a reason why, and it will be kicked back to us, and you will not have the game on your schedule anymore.
Jordan,
Okay.
hit the refresh button.
Okay, one sec. Got all these Zoom things. Did you publish a game to mine?
Maybe.
Okay, so here's the accept decline. So I cannot umpire on Friday, so I'm going to decline the game. It will just be removed from my not free. And it will be removed from my schedule once it loads. Come on. Okay, so that's how it looks there. Okay, there's other ways of looking. You can look future games. If you want to look at like games that you have done previously, you could go like last 30 days. This is I ref high school basketball at the state tournament, so that's what this one would be. But you can have a couple of different filters. Just make sure you hit apply. You can look at like what's the next 30 days look like. So it just depends on what you would like to do. Okay. The other one's going to be self-assign. Self-assign is very helpful because it's the way that you're going to get games from a regular season perspective. Okay. Should not be that many games, and I am going to go here instead. There shouldn't be that many games on your schedule from a tournament or from a traveling perspective. We're releasing the games at 8 o'clock tomorrow, and we'll send confirmation of that. I don't have any future games in there because we actually figured it out. For a different group, it's the same concept. All you do is you look and it shows you the same like date, time, position. Here's the sport level site, and you hit go. Once you hit go, the game is on your schedule and it shows up in the calendar. Okay. So just make sure you're aware of when games are being released. We send a lot of emails out when it comes to these types of things. So make sure that you are checking your email regularly. Arbiter will also send you emails about like reminders for games coming up. If you have games on your schedule, you need to accept those types of things. So we try to send you guys as many text messages as possible just because people are on their phones texting a lot more than looking at email. But there are some things because there are so many umpires that we just don't email for. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or anything in the chat about scheduling, getting things on your
When
schedule?
will the in-house games be released?
Good question. I don't have the schedule yet, so I don't actually can't give you a definitive answer. I don't think they start until like the second or third week in May. So I'm hoping to have it in the next few weeks. This year, what we're going to do is we're going to release the first half of the schedule, and then we'll get 3 weeks into the season and we'll release the second half of the schedule, just to give more people some opportunities.
Hey, Jordan.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is Dennis. I'm also using Arbiter because I'm doing summer hockey refereeing.
Yep.
Do you know, in your experience, do I need to do anything within Arbiter to make sure that, for whatever reason, I'm not logged into one or the other, but I'm actually logged into both? I can see both schedules.
Yeah. So under your account, it'll show up as lots of different things. That will be like how you join each group. But if you go to schedule, like I'm at right now, you'll be able to see both everything in at the same time. So like if I went like past 30 days, that's not with Wheelhouse umpires. It's with my basketball association. So you'll be able to see it there. So all of it comes into one schedule.
Okay.
Text me if you have any other questions. I can answer those because Taylor and I both have additional groups that we work in.
Okay. Awesome.
Anything else? Um, all right. I have a couple of questions. I'll answer them on the side. Blocks, some people use blocks, some people don't. It's not super important. The big thing is when you put your game on your schedule, it will block that time period for you. So I personally could not go in and find another game at 6 o'clock on Thursday because I already have a game. So that's the nice part about self-assigning your self-assign is it's going to block off anything, so you're not picking up multiple games at the same time. Obviously, you can't be at two places at once, so you don't have to worry about that. Big thing though is before you hit go, please check your schedule. Okay. The only way for you to get a game off your schedule once you put it on your schedule is for you to text us. And you do not want to be the guy that texts us 5 to 6 times getting off of games. We understand things happen. You've got baseball, family things, other jobs, life happens, those types of things, and we're able and willing to work with everybody when those things arise from time to time. But don't be the guy that signs up for 15 games and asks for 10 of them off because something else came up or I didn't check my schedule. Okay, so just make sure you work. If you're a younger guy, go over it with your parents. They have a lot of big calendars from what I've heard, so make sure that you take care of that for us. All right, I will keep on rolling. Under lists is going to be the other big one. There's a lot of other things here we don't use. So we don't use evaluations, we don't use payment, we don't use eligibility, we use lists. So under lists, if you go to forms, this is a really important, other than schedule, the most important thing. Okay. If you go to forms, okay, it will give you a lot of documentation. All right. So for you newer umpires, there's frequently asked questions for your parents, for the younger guys, new umpire excuse me. I'll cover a couple of these things. We need to update a few of them. It looks like we haven't done any this year, which will get taken care of in the next couple of weeks. But we've got like that Bielenberg Health East, M Health Fairview, whatever you call it. Like we got field maps there. We've got rules for a lot of these different things. So if you click on them, it will pull up different documents or it'll pull up leagues. So like leagues for MBL rules, it'll send it to you that league. So this is a really helpful resource for you guys to figure out, hey, one night I've got 11 AAA traveling. The next night I've got 7th and 8th grade in-house Woodbury. Or I'm doing Matamidi 4th and 5th grade, and then I've got a Legion game. Not saying any of that will happen, but just lots of different things. And so we want to make sure that you understand the rules and the differences between the levels. We will also post all the conferences, all the trainings. So like pregame conference, strike zone development, those types of things. We'll post these here once we get them. So make sure to refer back here. Okay. Payment policy, this is a little bit old, but it does cover the basics here. So from a pay perspective, we're direct deposit for everybody. If you're younger, ask your parents if you don't understand that, but money will be in your bank account. Our pay periods, 1st to the 15th, 16th through the end of the month. I've got to update this, so give me a week or so. Money will be in your bank account within 6 days. If you have one-off situations where you need money sooner for whatever reason, text me or call me. We'll get it figured out for you. But this is going to be kind of the general payment policy for us. The other one is going to be umpire code of conduct. Taylor covered some of these things. So it'll give you uniforms, things you can wear, some dress code situations, pregame conference, what happens if you're injured, fraternization conduct, different incidents and things. Make sure you're just very aware and understand what the requirements are based on the training Taylor's giving you, as well as the different documentations that are here. Okay. Last thing I will cover is going to be your account. So everybody needs to have a picture. Okay. When I've loaded your information into Arbiter, I've also loaded your all of your personal information that you submitted. So birthday, phone number, those types of things. Okay. What you need to do, and this is something that we've got to work on to get better. There are 300 umpires this year, and there's only 4 of us that help manage all of them. It's hard to put a name to a face unless we get face-to-face contact with you or you put a picture here. Okay. To put a picture here, all you need to do is click on the picture and you'd replace or you'd add a new one. This is just the picture I've went with. It just needs to be your face. Some of you have like football pictures, like action shots, can't see your face. If there's like 3 or 4 of you in a picture, still don't know who you are, especially if you're all about the same age in the picture. So please put a picture so that we can start to put faces, names, and learn people as best we can. Okay. Any questions about Arbiter? It's simple once you start using it. It's not super complicated system. We did our best to pick a system that is intuitive for you guys and for us. But we'll use it as best we can. And if you have any questions, email us, call us, text us. We will take care of you and make sure you get the good spot.
Pretty simple, guys. This is where you get your games, right? So like know this system if you can. Be in tune with it as much as possible. That self-assign is going to be your best friend. That is where you're going to find your games, and obviously I will reach out about tournaments. But yeah, that's how you get money. It's how you get paid. So be good to go. Cool, Jordan. Great job. Proud of you.
Thanks.
All right, we're gonna just keep trudging along here because we got time coming up here. Okay. All right. So we talked about our dealing with head coaches, and I'm gonna make sure I get my chat participants up again. There we go. All right. So we talked about coaches, we talked about players, we talked about fans, how to deal with those things like that. Um, One just reenactment real quick that kind of go through it is, we talked about this already, so I'm not going to go too much in depth on this one is, if we have a coach that comes up to us on a close play, right? Like, close pay at first or something, coach comes up to you and says, hey, what did you see there? He's yelling at you and stuff. Really what we talked about before, right? We want to be brief and we want to be factual with those types of things. So if a coach comes up to me and says, Taylor, what was that call? Like, I thought he was safe. Why'd you call him out in that instance? I'd go, coach, from my angle, I thought that the runner got there before that fielder had caught the ball, so that's why I called him safe. So, I'm keeping it very just brief, very observational. Like, this is what I saw, so this is what I called at that point. As soon as we get into situations where it's like, Coach, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, he was obviously out. Or like, hey, what do you mean? Like, that was obviously an out call. Like, we want to stay away from those situations that will, heighten certain things. So we want to be very factual when we're talking to them. And again, we just want to be very brief. Tell them what you saw, what the rule is, if it's a rule specific thing, and basically just, edit that conversation at that point too as well. All right, got another question for people here. If we have an issue with a player or fan, who do we put it on or who do we go to handle the situation? Who's got it?
The coach.
Coach. Beautiful. Claps for Lincoln. Thank you. Head coach, right? We're gonna go to that head coach. We're gonna say, Coach, hey, we're having an issue with number three. Coach, we're having an issue with the fan in the outfield. Can you please deal with this situation? If you do not, this is what's going to happen to that player or fan as well. So again, go to the head coach. They're there for a reason. Do what you need to do on that portion. All right. Any questions on any of the ejection stuff that we talked about? So anything on players, fans, coaches, any situations that you guys want to go over? Any questions on those things? Sweet. All right. That sounds good. We will keep moving along. All right, administration of the game. So this kind of gets into just rules that are more on the administration side. So we talked about this already, 15, 10, 5, right? I'm going to engrave it in your brains by the time this is all over. 15 minutes to the field, 10 minutes to go to the coaches, tell them you're going to have a pregame minutes in 5 minutes. Go look at the field, figure out what you need from the space. And then 5 minutes, make sure you have that head coach there talking about the pregame conference at that point. All right, pregame conference. If you're a Wheelhouse person, we will have this information, like Jordan had said, on Arbiter. If you are a White Bear Lake or you are a Hudson person, please let me know. I'm more than happy to send you this pregame conference. My expectation with this, I would say, is not that everyone needs to go over everything that's in these pregame conference documents, but just make sure you cover the big stuff, right? Maybe if you're seeing something more in a game that you want to discuss in a pregame conference, I would usually try to focus on those things, but just try to go through those as much as you can. Obviously, first we want to introduce ourselves to the coaches and players. Hi, my name's Taylor Voigt. I'm going to be the umpire of your game today. Pretty simple. For most games, you're going to have to get game balls from the coaches. So grab game balls. We want to define that field of play, right? Every field that we're on is going to be a little different on where those foul lines are, where those out of plays are. Maybe there's a hole in the fence. We want to define those areas. So if it's a fence that's not all the way extended, it's not completely enclosed, and there's a, just grass area where it could be out of play, I'm going to go to the coaches and say, hey, coach, for that out of bounds, we're just going to go fence line extended all the way to that back foul pole, and we're just going to draw a line. I'm gonna be the one that's to determine if it's out of play or not, but that's kind of how we're do it. Or hey, if it's getting lodged underneath that fence, or if it goes underneath the fence there, we're gonna call that out of play at that point too as well. So, just defining with any of those weird situations what's gonna happen. We're going to define the strike zone if we can too as well. So, of course, for the younger ages, it's going to be our armpits to our knees, and then it's going to be a ball on each side of the plate. And then if we're doing the older ages, so 12s that are up, it's going to be your lettering to your tops of your knees, and then it's going to be the blacks of the plate too as well. So just saying, hey, this is how I'm defining the strike zone. So when your guys are up to bait, this is how it needs to look. We're gonna make sure everyone's properly equipped. We're not gonna have any jewelry. We're, make sure everyone's wearing their uniform properly. Just discussing those things to make sure that everything is right. We're gonna do more safety checks, right? We're gonna make sure those players aren't leaving their bats or weights. Tell the coaches, hey, we're gonna land about 3 to 5 pitches for inning per pitcher. Again, trying to, protect or trying to control that flow of the game as much as possible. Obviously, we need a home and away team. So if we're doing a tournament game, we're going to flip a coin, see who's home and away. If we don't, if it's a regular season game, we're going to say, hey, Woodbury, you're home, and Hudson, you're the away team. And then we're going to ask, do you guys have any questions? Have you seen any plays that, you've seen during the season that you want to discuss and make sure we're on the same page? This would be a good opportunity from the box, right? Like I talked about, hey, we're going to call a warning on a box if it doesn't have any issue on the play, but we're going to call an automatic balk if it actually does affect the play and the pitcher throws somebody out. And then what I always like to end with is just say, hey guys, this is baseball. Let's hustle. Let's have some fun out there. Right? We're gonna hustle. I'm gonna hustle as an umpire. I'm gonna do my job. I want to see the same thing from your players too as well. Again, just trying to really make sure, things are spreading out, make sure they're hustling between innings, getting to their positions, really shorten down that time as much as possible too as well. Again, going through this quickly. Documents on Arbiter. If you need it, let me know. Pick and choose which ones you want to do with it. I would say if you had to focus on some, really defining that field of play is going to be big. Making sure everyone's, safe wise and everything. And then, really asking those questions if they have anything that they want to go over to as well. So really good aspect from there. Any questions on the pregame conference or anything like that? Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, Michael.
What about around the horn? Are teams allowed to throw the ball around the horn or just straight back to the pitcher?
Yeah, I would say for this one, I would say my famous line of know the age. I would say a lot of the younger ages, especially the players that can't throw the ball around the horn, I typically don't let them do it. If you get to like the older ages where they're like quick, right? Like they can do it so good and they're good every single time. I'm fine with it. It's not an illegal thing. But if they're like constantly missing the ball or it's causing a, delay in the game, I typically will go coach like, hey, can we not do around the horn? It's kind of delaying this game and it's making things longer than it needs to be. Good question.
I have one. So I'm an assistant coach on a
Love
traveling
it.
team. Um, we've had, it doesn't happen a lot, but the umps will when they're doing their meeting with the managers, they'll say what their strike zone is,
Yep.
big, small. I mean,
You've seen it all probably.
yeah, I've seen it all, and some of them are pretty freaking tiny,
Sure.
and like. Obviously, the lower levels, yeah, it's got to be bigger. You want them to swing, you want them to hit, right? Like I've seen teams at the 12, 13 level that just they don't swing the bat. And that's kind of why I'm getting into
Yes.
this is I'm a coach and I think I can be a pretty good ump
Love the confidence. Yes.
and yeah, like the bigger strike zone and that's so is that something we should tell the coaches like, hey, here's my strike zone. Tell your players, right? Is
Yeah.
that something we should do?
So I'm going to tell you how I say it. And you can take this if you want, you don't have to. I will never say as an umpire that I'm going to expand the strike zone. Now, with that being said, if I'm doing the younger ages, I will go to the coaches and say, coaches, this is the strike zone. I'm not going to expand the strike zone, but make sure your players are looking to swing the bat with two strikes.
Yeah, so
So
the
you're
younger,
basically,
the tell them when they're younger. Obviously, if they're older,
yes.
they're should be all pretty good baseball players and they can figure it out, right?
Exactly. So I'm
Okay.
not like directly saying, hey, I'm going to call a big strike zone or I'm going to expand my strike zone because I would say as an umpire, is right, we want to be consistent as much as we can. But to your point exactly, Brett, if you have someone that's not swinging the bat, it's not good for the game of baseball. We want to make sure that's going along. So I may, as an umpire, kind of behind the curtain a little bit, I may, expand that strike zone, especially if they have their bat on their shoulder. They're not even looking there to swing.
Yeah. And I have a different perspective coming as a coach for
Yeah.
many years.
Yeah, we want those kids to swing the bat. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's how I
exactly.
will say it is like,
Okay.
again, hey, I'm not going to
Thanks.
spend the strike zone, but just make sure we're swinging with two strikes.
Yeah.
And they,
Thank
they
you.
get the gist of it typically. So yeah, good question. Cool. All right, we'll keep going here. Okay, must slide rule. So you have probably been told this rule at some point that there is a must slide rule. And I'm here to tell you, as an umpire, there is no such thing as a must slide rule. This is something that sometimes I will discuss in my pregame conference, but a lot of times I'll tell coaches like, hey, there is no must slide rule. The rule, the way they actually have it stated is players are required to slide to avoid contact. So the must slide rule, basically what people think it's like, hey, you have to slide every single time. It's like, nope, you don't have to. But they do need to avoid contact. So of course, if we have a close play at a base, and if all of a sudden we have contact that's made, the runner did not slide, we can call that runner out in that situation. So again, it's a judgment call, but we can call that out. I like to be proactive and say, hey, when we have players, if it's going to be a close play or you think it's going to be a close play, when in doubt, let's slide it out. It's going to create just, get rid of so many different issues that you're possibly going to have in those situations. So really making sure that you are telling them that. But again, if you feel like it's there to protect the safety of those fielders. So if you feel like a batter is or a runner is, making contact, if it can injure somebody, we could call them out in that situation. Obviously, if it gets to a level where you've seen the runners run over the catcher, lowers his shoulder or anything like that. Typically, we could go increase that to an ejection. But if it's just contact where maybe the guy loses the ball or he doesn't get out of the way or something, I would probably call that an out. But again, use your best judgment for that situation too as well. Time limits, everyone's favorite thing. I always like to put this rule as I think it's really funny because 5 years ago when I first starting or we first started taking over the business, only games that had time limits were tournament games. And I will tell you, most of our games, if not all of them, will have time limits nowadays, which is awesome. So all your regular season games all the tournaments, everything that we need. Gone are the days of hopefully having 3 hour games. We want to try to, get as much innings and much play as we can as possible, but we understand that after a certain point, it just doesn't become fun for the umpires, for the players, for the coaches. Regular season, you want to check the rules. For tournaments, it's typically 6 innings is no new inning after hour 45. And for 7 inning, it's no new innings after 2 hours. What I mean by no new inning. So a lot of stipulations or a lot of, assumptions that umpires will have is that that's a hard stop. So there's no such thing as a hard stop. I've never seen a game that has a hard stop. So an hour 45 basically means no new inning. If you are in, let's say, the bottom of the 5th inning and the home team is winning and you get right past hour 45 and now you're on hour 50. That inning does not stop. You continue to play, but once that 5th inning is over, you cannot start a new inning, which would be the 6th inning, because you've already passed that time limit of hour 45. So no, that means no new inning. Another situation is going to be like if you are, let's say you're at time limit. So again, you're at hour 50, the away team is losing and they're up to bat. And their at bat gets done, you're at hour 50, you're at time limit. Obviously, the home team is winning at that point. They don't need to bat or anything. And so the game would just be called at that point too as well. So really, you're just trying to finish the inning. But obviously, if the home team is winning at that point, you would not need to start the new inning at that point. Like I said, regular season, you really want to check the rules for each of the associations. They're all going to be different. Majority of the 6 inning games are hour 45 and 7 innings for tournaments, but for weekday games, a lot of them you just add 15 minutes. So 6 innings is usually no new inning after 2 hours, and then 7 innings is no new inning after 2:15. But you also look at some of the developmental. Some are hour 30, some are hour 40. So just make sure you're checking those too as well. But understand again, no such thing as a hard stop. It's just the no new inning after as well. Darkness is going to be another thing. So, especially we get to the beginning of the season here, we're starting earlier and earlier. So, darkness becomes an issue, especially for some of those night games that we have. This really applies to things that we don't have lights on the field. So, just knowing that piece of it. What I will do is I will take my phone. So, you can see I have my cell phone here and I'm pulling up like the weather app and I can tell, which I actually can't do it today, but let's say for instance it says, okay, sunset's going to be at 7:35 or 7:45, let's say. So I'm saying, okay, 7:45. I'm not going to start a new inning after 7:30. So 15 minutes before sunsets. So I'm basically saying that. I'll communicate to the coaches, if we're getting close to it, maybe I'll tell them at the beginning. But really just setting that precedent to say, hey, we're saying this cut and dry time because once we get past sunset or get close to it, that's when it starts to get a little tough and it gets to be a little unsafe for some of the darkness. If you get past that and a half inning takes really long, a whole inning takes really long, really at the end of the day, just make sure you're using common sense, right? If you can't see the ball coming from the pitcher to home plate, it's probably too dark and there's a safety issue with it too as well. So again, just making sure you're using common sense and then really being proactive when you're communicating to those coaches to say, hey, we're at 7:30, we're not going to start a new inning after this. But same thing with that one, I wouldn't really do a hard stop. I would just use your best determination, talk to the coaches, make sure you're all on the same page for a lot of those darkness situations.
I have a question there.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that applies to fields that do not have lights. And
Yes.
what about handling lights? Is that an umpire responsibility or a coach?
So if the field has lights and they turn on, then your darkness wouldn't pull into account. Then you would run in more into that time limit rule. I will say with that, we do have a lot of games. So especially if they're regular season where we do have 6 o'clock games and we have 8 o'clock games. So if they know or if you know that there is a 6 o'clock game, or sorry, if there is an 8 o'clock game after that 6 o'clock, even though there is lights and everything, they typically you want to run to that time limit so they can start that 8 o'clock game then next. And then if you're doing the 8 o'clock, obviously, the lights stay on. Most of the lights at around our places will stay until 10:30. So, there's time that you shouldn't have to deal with that. But I would say a lot of times the coaches don't have control over the lights. So if those lights don't turn on, you kind of just have to go with the darkness rule then at that point. Yeah, good question. Any other questions on darkness there? Cool. Okay, rain delays. So going to be pretty similar with these. We want to use our best discretion. So again, I feel like I'm saying this over and over again, but we're just trying to protect the safety of the players, right? So if it is downpouring, it is raining super hard, you can't even see the ball, that's when we probably want to stop the game. If it's something where it's, starting to rain a little bit, it's not affecting the game, you're not seeing puddles in the field, nothing like that. Typically I'll just continue with that game, but we want to talk to those coaches and say, hey, do you guys want to keep playing or what do you want to do at that point? If it starts downpouring, you take a break. If you can start again, not get a washout, great. If you get to a point where it is a washout, you stop the game just right on the spot there. So if you have a rain where it starts raining and it's not going to stop all night, right? Like we know for sure we're not going to play the game. If you're at the bottom of the fifth inning or the bottom of the fourth, whatever it is, there's two outs, there's a 3-2 count, there's a guy on second base. You basically just stop the game right there. Then the coaches will reach out to us to reschedule that game, and then we'll give you first dibs back if you want to continue that game if they when they reschedule it, if you're available, obviously too as well. So we typically only have one or two of those a year. A lot of times the rain starts and then it stops again, and they can continue on that. For lightning issues, if you see lightning, you want to clear the field immediately. Of course, we have metal bats, right? We have a lot of things that could conduct electricity, so we want to stop that as much as possible. Make sure they clear the field, and if it's definitely getting to a point where it's unsafe, make sure they go to their cars. Um, last thing we wanted to do, obviously, too, is there's lightning going on, and they're in the dugouts. It's not a safe space technically, so they have to go there. Same thing with what we talked about the rainouts. If there is a lightning and you keep seeing it, you can stop the game. You cannot start it until 15 minutes after that last lightning strike that you see. So if your last lightning strike is at 6:45, the next time that you could technically start that game again, it would be 7 o'clock. And that really, again, just make sure that that weather clears as much as possible with it. If you're at M Fairview Health East, there is a lightning detection system. And so there's like a siren that will go off and then it will go off again once it's done too as well. So that usually just takes all that guesswork out of it too as well. So last thing I'll say, so if you do have a washout lightning, it's kind of goes similar to a 10 run rule. In order for it to be considered a full game, the losing team just has to bat 4 times, so 3.5, 4 innings. So if you get to a game where they've only batted 2 times, that's when you would stop the game and keep playing it at a later date. If they've gotten through 5, 6 innings, whatever it is, and you get washed out or something, you can consider that game just final at that point because the teams have gotten enough at bats then to consider it a full game in the eyes of the league and everything too as well. So yeah. Sam asked here, if you are an umpire in one of the rainouts, will you get paid at all? Good question. Everyone's talking about pay. I love it. So our policy, yes, you will get paid. I believe I could check the policy, but if it's a rainout, you get 60% of that game because obviously we're going to pay you for getting it out there and doing the game with it too as well. And then you'll get the additional portion for the reschedule portion of it too as well. So like I said, we try to communicate that when it does happen to say, hey, you'll get this amount of pay for that portion of it too as well. So we'll just keep everyone on the same page. But good question. Cool. All right. I think I lied. I said that 10 run rule, or sorry, I said that time limits are everyone's favorite rule. I'm gonna re-say that 10 run rule is everybody's favorite rule because this will make games shorter. Umpires love it. I would say as an umpire, never hope for it, but if it happens, it happens, right? Like we never want to, change the game so that a 10 run rule does happen. We want to stay fair. We want to stay unbiased. But 10 run rules will happen throughout the season, and we want to make sure we're following those. So with 10 run rules, the rule in like a lot of the leagues, I think is worded very poorly because it's very confusing. So for 6 inning games, they're going to say no new inning after 3.5 innings, or for 7 inning games, it's no new after 4.5 innings, which I think is really confusing because if I read that, I'd be like, oh, losing team only has to bat 3 times, or hey, losing team only has to bat 4 times. The way that I interpret it and the way that it is written, or the way that it should be written, I think, is for 16 games, the losing team has to bat 4 times, and the for 7 games, the losing team has to bat 5 times. So again, what that basically means is, let's say you're in the top of the fifth inning, and the away team is losing. Let's say they're down 10-0. If they do not score a run and you get to the bottom of the fifth inning and that home team is still up 10-0, that game would be over because that losing team batted, 4 times or 5 times or whatever it is too as well. If the home team is the losing team, and let's say in a 6 inning game, they're in the bottom of the fourth inning and they do not score, you do not start the fifth inning because, they batted 4 times, 10-run rule has been applied, and they are good to go at that point as well. So just know those pieces of it too as well. It's very misinterpreted, I would say a lot, but just know 4 times that they need to bat for 6 inning games and 5 times they need to do for 7 inning games. Some of our leagues go for state for some of the like state tournaments. We'll do 15-run rules. But I would say it's very far and few between that we do the 15-run rule. A lot of it's just going to be the 10-run rule for most of our associations too as well. So cool. And then this last part, we already went over ejections, but this is basically just what Gopher and what MBL are two big traveling teams, kind of what they define as ejections. The one thing I will say, when you eject somebody, if you do, you need to send us a detailed ejection report to Wheelhouse ASAP. We need the players, if it's a player, we need the number, we need the team, what game you are on, what happened. Because what we need to do is we need to communicate that and reach out to the league so that they can reach out and say, hey, this player, coach, whoever it is, gets suspended. The last thing we want to have happen is you eject a coach on a Tuesday night. You don't let us know until Wednesday, and then that coach goes and coaches a game that's on Wednesday. So we really just want to make sure that you are letting us know as soon as possible so you have the most information that you know, and that we can then communicate that to that league so they can take whatever necessary processes with it too as well.
So should we do that as soon as we eject them or right after the game?
After the game, yeah. Don't do it during the game. After the game, go home, type it on your phone, do whatever you need to do. But yeah, after the game, you would send us that. Good question. All right. Got more questions here. All right. For administration, I got like 9 different things on here. Can anyone name 3 different things that we want to go over in our pregame conference? This is a harder one. We'll see if we can do it. If anyone's audacious enough.
Strike zone.
Strike zone, that's one, Chris. What else you got?
Ground rule.
What'd you say?
Ground rules.
Ground rules, perfect.
Yep, field of play is
I
a
see
good one.
field of play, perfect. Let's just, name off whatever you guys need. We don't need 3. Just keep spitting them off. Let me ask this one. How do we know who's batting first?
If it's not a home team and you're playing in a tournament, you're going to do a coin toss.
Perfect. Good one.
Introduce yourself.
Introduce yourself. Dennis, that was the one I was looking for. Perfect. Thank you. Lincoln's got strike zone. He's got who's the home team, foul territory. Anything with safety? Do we want to talk about safety at all? Nobody wants to talk about safety? Okay. Letting know the bats, right? Like we're going to want to see where those bats are. We want to make sure that they're staying out of the dugouts. Really looking at those things.
Can I ask a strange question, Tay? I don't know if you have the answer for it or not. I ran into it a few times last year, but let's say a kid hits a triple, right, or a double, whatever, it doesn't matter, throws his bat down and it's sitting on home plate, kid coming in from third, right?
Yep.
And nobody's there to move the bat. So I just like the catcher technically should, but the catcher is looking for the ball coming in because the guy's coming in from third, right? So
Yep.
I just grab the bat and I throw it away. I just throw the bat. And is that something that we're responsible for in that space, or is the team member or whatever? Because that's kind of a safety and security thing too, where
Yeah.
I don't want anybody tripping over a bat or getting hurt in regards. So I just basically grabbed the bat and threw it. So
Yep, totally. I would say it's not our responsibilities, but with that being said, I would say it's going to make your life a heck of a lot easier if you do it, right?
got it. Okay. Yep. That's what I kind of figured, and that's what I did. I just did it out of like just common sense, but I just want to make sure that I didn't want to do something that they didn't want me to do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say whenever you have the chance, get it out of the way. But with that being said, the rule technically there is like it's part of the field of play. So, they can slide into the bat like everything, but I would say, yeah, to get you out of those situations and stop from having to explain a rule or
Right.
possibly get somebody hurt, just yeah, grab the bat and try to get out
Got
there.
it. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Ethan had the balk and the balk warning. That's great. Sliding rule, also great. Um, you guys, nobody got the hustle and have fun one. That's like my other big one. I'm just kidding. It's fine. Um, all really good ones, right? I think we talked about introducing ourselves, defining the strike zone, right? Field of plays, looking at make sure everyone's properly equipped, talking about warm up pitches, but making sure we're really touching on those as much as possible with it. So all those things you can include. All right, any questions on 10 run rule, weather, pregame conference, anything that you guys wanted to go over as well with this? Cool. All right, we got about 7 minutes here. We're gonna get quickly into umpire mechanics, and then we'll see how far we get with this, and then we can kind of end at that point. So, all right, so mechanics. We will go over this in the mechanics training that we have on whatever day that is, like the 20 something. We have it in an email. But this I'm going to go over just very briefly to show you guys at least a visual portion of it. A lot of the mechanics, though, we will be going in actual and teach you firsthand and get you on the field. It's going to be a basketball court, but it will be the field at that point. So the slot position. I think I can annotate on this one. This is really good. So the slot position, really the biggest thing that we want to see with the slot position is where your feet are. So you can see here this umpire, right? His feet are kind of strangling or kind of in between that catcher's. And you can see his view, right, is not very great. He's in the way of that catcher. If that catcher pops up, you're going to lose all your sight of view at that point. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that. The correct way that we're going to see that we want to see the mechanic for the slot position is you want your foot here, right kind of down that middle of that catcher. So it's right in that back spot. And then you want to have your other foot right here by that batter. So you're protected by that catcher and you're protected by that batter. And then it's not a great view here, but they're kind of angled a little bit so that they can see that bottom part of that strike zone, which is right. Whoa, that kind of just messed up on me. Kind of right here too as well. This will give you the best view to make the call for the strikes. The hardest thing as an umpire, I will say, is that bottom outside corner. But if you were in the right or if you're in the right position for the slot, it's going to be a lot easier to see that. Of course, if that catcher pops up, you still have that angle to see here as much as we can. And then this is a kind of a weird top-down angle, but we'll talk about more. We want you to be in line with that top of the strike zone. So, right in that armpits or right in that, lettering that we have to it as well. I have a really good example of a game or an umpire that is doing it. So let's go to that. Stop. Okay.
Quick question, do you reverse it for a left-handed batter?
You do, yes. So you want to be in between the catcher and the batter at all times. Good question. So when I actually just had, I'm going to call it Josh. I don't think he's on the call here today, but we have an umpire, really good umpire, very eager. He would get down in a slot position a little too early, and if you do, it hurts a little bit. We want to get into that slot position as soon as we start seeing that pitcher kind of wind up or start making making his momentum towards home. So you can see here, this umpire right now is standing, right? Like he's just up in the air at that point. As the pitcher starts his windup, boom, he's getting down, right? So he's getting down into that spot. Really good angle. He's got a pretty wide stance, which I'm okay with, but you can see there his foot right here is right kind of with that batter. And then this is a weird angle, so it's probably closer to more like here. But you want to kind of have it more in that middle spot that we have right there. As you can see, he has a really good angle on that one. You can see he's got a good angle on both the strike zones. As the pitch comes in, he stays down, right? He's right at that top level of that strike zone so that he can see anything. So basically what I mean by that is If he's at that top level of that strike zone, if it goes over his head, it's obviously going to be a ball. But if he's at that top level of that strike zone, he's going to know, hey, if it comes right in my eyes or if it's under, it's going to be a strike. Obviously, it's a little harder to see on that lower spot, but that's going to be a pretty good size of it. Then what he's going to do is he stays down, right? See, he doesn't move whatsoever. He stays in that positioning. He stays solid. He's not flinching. He's not moving back. I do see a lot of umpires that flinch. We want to try we can. It's a little tough, right? You're not dealing with catchers that catch everything. Sometimes you got a 9 or 10-year-old that can't catch the ball. I know it's tough, but staying in that slot, it really is going to help us, see that strike zone as much as possible and really try to make the best calls that we can at that point. So really good one. He calls a strike 3 in that, so pretty easy on that one. But any questions on the slot position? Like I said, we'll go over that more in depth when we get to mechanics training. Ooh, okay. This is a good place to stop. We're at 8:28 right now. We will talk about next week more of the mechanics for balls and strikes, and then obviously we're going to get into our safe and out calls. We're going to get into our different field plays, things like that. So before we let go here, is there any other questions that anyone has? Anything with professionalism, anything with safety, anything with ejections, anything that anyone wanted to go over before we leave today?
You guys did a great job. Thank you so much, Taylor.
Thank you,
Appreciate you and Jordan both.
Of course.
Awesome.
Thank you. Beautiful. All right. Final closing things here. Today's Tuesday. Thursday, 6:30 to 8:30. We'll do the same time again. So make sure you're here. If you can't attend that session on the 17th, we will be recording this whole video. So you'll have to go in and watch that second section with it to get credit for it too as well. So make sure we're doing that. If you have any questions or want anything else, please reach out to us. Send us an email, send us a text. Make sure you're getting your documents in, the whole shebangs. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone's focus. I know it's hard, again, on a weeknight. But yeah, we will talk to you Thursday and have a good night, everyone. All right. I'm gonna hit the record button and here we go. So kind of just going over what we talked about last week or Tuesday. Wow, not last week, Tuesday. That's what I meant to say. So we focused on kind of that first part here. So if you missed the Tuesday session, the first part I would say is a lot of it was just to do with, things umpire related, right? So things that you maybe don't know as a baseball player, you're just kind of going through things. So we focus on that. We did not finish umpire mechanics, so we'll get into that and finish that section. Jordan already covered arbiter, so we won't worry about that piece. And then we're going to focus on the second portion here. So more of that baseball rules. And again, we're not going to talk about the basics with baseball rules like, outs and strikes and things. We're going to just be more specific on things that just kind of get misinterpreted as a baseball player and as coaches and fans do too as well. And then just kind of how we would deal with it as an umpire thing too as well. So I'm going to just come out of my Zoom here real quick, or out of my slides, so we can go to that exact slide that we need to. All right. Okay. So last time we left off, we talked about the slot position. So we watched that video with the slot position, basically, right? Here's the incorrect spot. We don't want to be right behind that catcher. We want to have a really good stance, with our right foot in this case being behind that catcher and their left foot behind that batter too as well. Getting a nice low stance, being in line with that, top of the strike zone too as well. So it gives us a good angle at that portion to it. We'll talk about some mechanics too as well, so I won't spend too much time and we'll just kind of move along with things here. Other mechanics, so for balls and strikes call. So from a mechanic perspective, one of the biggest things I see from new umpires not doing is vocalizing their ball calls. So what I mean by that is when a pitch comes in and a ball is thrown, we want you to vocalize it, but you don't have to do any indication with it. So you'll just go in and say ball or something like that. A lot of our guys will just not say anything. And what I kind of say to that is it confuses coaches a little bit because they're like, oh, did he mean to say strike there? Did he not? Just take all of that confusion out of it and just say ball when you're saying those. Two things with strikes when we have an umpire mechanic wise for a looking strike. So a looking strike, of course, is going to be a strike that goes through the strike zone and is not swung by the batter. we're going to vocalize that strike. So we're going to say strike, and we're also going to indicate with our right hand. So this is my right hand. Looks like my left, but you would indicate like that. So you go strike, and then obviously go over that way with it. As the contrary side of it, with a swinging strike. So of course, ball doesn't have to go through the strike zone, but batter swings at it, now goes all the way through. That's when we're just going to indicate, but we're not actually going to say strike. Everybody knows that the batter swung. We're not calling it a foul ball. We're not doing anything like that. So we're just indicating strike with that too as well. Easy thing to mess up, and it's an easy thing. I would say that it's not the end of the world if you do, you mess one up on a swinging strike or on a looking strike. But the proper mechanic, I would say, is those two things. For foul balls, timeouts, and dead balls, so you'll have these in different situations. Just going to be your hands up in the air. I like to get mine really high, so you can't really see too much, but boom, kind of like hands in the air like that. And you're going to say, foul ball or time or dead ball, and get it really loud too as well. Basically, any of these situations is stopping the play at hand. So of course, we know a foul ball, ball's out of play, it automatically becomes dead. Timeout is if, a fielder comes in and they want to call time. And then a dead ball would be if it hits the batter or, a different situation with the two as well. But biggest thing that I'll be talking about in mechanics training is really just being loud and getting your hands up, because, there could be a play going on and all of a sudden you're trying to stop it for some specific reason, or, foul ball's happening and a guy's running down to first base. And maybe someone is stealing first base. So you really just want to stop that as soon as you can, and make that known that, hey, ball's dead at that point. These are just going to be some umpire mechanics here. So one of the ones I would say from here that again, same thing, harp on with new umpires. So when we have a dead ball or anything that we have, it's already starting to thunderstorm a little bit. If we have a dead ball like that, we need to put the ball back into play at the time. So this one right here, this do not pitch, this basically when a batter gets back in the batter box after a foul ball, dead ball, timeout, and pitcher is up ready to pitch, we'll put our hand up like this and say, hey, don't pitch the ball yet. And then when they're all ready to go, we say, play ball or ball in, anything like that, to indicate, hey, the ball is live again. We called it dead for some specific reason. Now we're going to put the ball back into play. So we're going to say play ball at that point. Some of the other ones here, so obviously the timeout, foul ball, dead ball. We'll talk about foul tips, fair balls, foul balls, things like that. For the count, so the count here, and again, I know I'm inverted, so just watch out for that. We're going to do balls with our left hand, and we're going to do strikes with our right hand. So if you think about this backwards, so if it's 3 and 2, or it's 2 and 1, we're going to do left hand first and then right hand. Some umpires will go both hands at the same time, but just make sure that your left hand is the one that you're calling the balls, and the right hand is the one that you're calling strikes. So if it's like, hey, it's 3 and 2 count, pull in, or it's a 1 and 1 count, play ball, anything like that, to really do it.
Hey Tay, we're still like we're not loving the idea of full count with a fist, right?
I don't love full counts.
Yeah.
I kind of think it's a redundant, unnecessary thing, if I'm being completely honest.
Yep.
Totally fine if you do it. I personally don't. It's easy to say, hey, 3 and 2 count, right? Like we know it's a full count.
Yep.
People know it, or they should know it at that point. Maybe at the younger ages if you really want to get it through. But again, I think it's an unnecessary mechanic that we can use, but don't need to use it. So
Got it. 10-4. Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks, Tay.
of course. The other thing is we're gonna have a clicker. So this is a clicker that we're gonna keep our balls and our strikes on. So you can hear these clicks, and that's why they call it a clicker. We're gonna keep that in our left hand at all times. So when I'm calling balls and strikes, I'm gonna go like, I can do it, but still have my thumb on the clicker like this. So again, if I have it like this, I'm gonna go 3 and 2. I'm gonna go 1 and 1 or anything like that, but I still have that in my left hand. The way these are made is they kind of fit in your palm pretty nicely with your left hand. If you're a lefty, it doesn't work super well. So try your best to kind of get it with your left hand. We also don't want to use our right hand because this is what we call our indicating hand. So everything when we take our mask off, when we have our clicker in our hand, we always want to have in our left so that we can call outs, point, do whatever we want with our right hand too as well. Strikeout calls. So this is one where so Chris, to your point, I'm a little sticklers on the 3-2 count one. Strikeout calls, I'm a little less stickler on it. This is where you guys can get creative with your strike calls. I won't do mine right now because we're over Zoom. I did it on Saturday, but this can get more creative. The only thing I will say with our strikeout three calls is we want to make sure that they, are known, but we don't want to be disrespectful. So of course we don't want to make anything again where we're, making us the center of attention. We're, embarrassing a kid for striking out. So, we want it to be really good and loud, but we don't want it to be over the top in some of those situations. I think I might have, I don't know if I have the video up anymore. Um, so yeah, so know that piece of it too as well. The biggest thing with strikeouts, you don't do your strikeout or your punch outs every single time. So when we're doing strike threes, if it is a looking strike, so again, ball's coming through the strike zone, batter does not swing, that's when we do our punch out. So it's a strike three, pull the cord, flip it up, boom, drop the hammer, whatever you want to do. That's going to be our punch outs. If we have a swing and a miss, so if it's going to be a strike three with a swing and a miss, then we're just going to point at the batter and then call them out. So indicating hand right, we're calling them out. So I'll usually just point and say, batter's out at that point. Really just indicating that. Again, everybody knows it was a strike because the batter swung, it, went back into the catcher's hand. Pretty simple one. So we're just going to do pretty much that portion of it. Foul tip strike threes. So we'll talk more about foul tips, but that's when it hits off the bat, goes directly right into that catcher's mitt or their other hand. That one, we're going to indicate our strike three call. We're going to point, and then we're just going to call a strike three at that. So only time we're going to do our punch out or our strike three call, the more creative one, is when we have a looking strike in that instance, and then the other two will follow just based on how the batter hits it or a foul tip in that instructions. And I always think this is a really funny one too, just some of the different ones. These are just more creative ones, but again, make it your own. Go watch the majors. They're pretty good at the strike three call. Next thing we'll talk about is calling time. So calling time, right? So with this one, what I always tell umpires is you are the one that is in control for calling time. Coaches and players, they don't call time, they request time from you. So never in an instance do you have to give a coach or a player time if you feel or deem that it's not necessary or the play is still going on. Really good example of this is, let's say we have a guy on second base and we have a ball that's hit to the outfield. That left fielder grips it, brings it into the shortstop. All of a sudden he's turning around right because he's in the field and he wants to call time. If that guy that was on second base went to third and now he's rounding and going home, if he's still running through that baseline and that shortstop is calling time or trying to request time, I typically would not give him time because, right, the play is still going on. We don't want to call that play dead until all the runners have reached their base and everything is kind of settled down a little bit. So we just want to make sure we're aware of those situations. I also like to say too, I don't like to give time every single time the defense takes to bring the ball in the infield. Really, at that point, they're just saying, hey, I might make a mistake here. I might overthrow my pitcher. I might do something. So that's why I'm trying to call time in this instance. And so we really just want to only call time when we deem it's necessary at that point. And again, we grant it, they ask for it. So making sure they're asking when it's necessary at that point. Couple questions here. We should be loud, right? I'm a coach, so many times we can't hear the umpires and they're asking for calls. Perfect example, Brett. Yep. I mean, if you're a coach, right? Same thing with this one. We talked about kind of the mechanics here with signaling those. We want to get our hands up high and we want to call time, right? So we're going to go time. Everyone can hear it. Plays dead. Nothing can move after that. So really making our presence known, which is kind of a contrary, right? Because I said, hey, let's try to be the spectator of the game, not be really known. But in this instance, this is one where we want everyone to hear us so we know what's going on and everybody else knows what's going on as well. So good question. I talked about putting the ball back into play, like I said. So, when the ball goes out of play for a foul ball, timeout, dead ball, we're going to put our hand up and then we're going to say ball in or play to put that ball back into play. If we have our hand up and let's say there's a guy on first base and the pitcher goes and throws over to first base and he puts that guy out at first, if we haven't put that ball back into play yet, technically that person at first is not out. Only outs can occur, only plays can occur when we put that ball back into play. So it's really important that we're doing that every single time that we can so that, the play can move on. That runner at first, if it's, they're trying to steal, can go off too as well. So really making sure that we're doing that every time we have one of these situations too as well.
Hey Taylor, quick question
Yep.
for you on that one. I normally don't put my hand up. I usually stand in front of home plate, in front of the catcher, so that they're not going to throw the ball and the ball isn't in play at that point. Is that still okay to do it that way? Or would you
One,
still prefer to be behind the catcher and hold the hand up and say, we're not going yet?
yeah. Let me ask you this question. Is it quicker
Yeah.
to have your hand up and put it down, or to walk around home plate to go behind the catcher?
It is, to your point, it is quicker. It is quicker to put my hand up.
Yeah. I would
But I
say,
wouldn't, but it's easy if I'm standing in front of the catcher, then I feel like there's less opportunity that they realize that the game is dead right now, right?
yeah.
And I haven't basically initiator started the game.
Yeah.
But to your point, speed wise, 100%. I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go back to my lines and say know the age, right? Like I would say if you have a kid that's not following directions, maybe you do need to stand in front of home plate. Just
Okay.
he gets the idea to say, hey, let's not do that. When you get to the older ages, they're, they kind of get it a little more and they'll understand it. And if they
Right.
don't, I'll usually give them a warning and say, hey, like we need to wait, right? Like we need to make sure
Yep.
we do that. I won't break out this rule mostly ever, but technically, if they throw a pitch, it's a balk. Because, in order for a pitch to be thrown, the batter has to be ready, the umpire has to be ready, everything like that. But, I probably would never use that, and just, kind of talk to him if I can as well with that.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. No, I just wanted to make sure I was doing it right because I feel like at the beginning of the year I was using the stop sign, but then there was instances where the kids would still try to throw the ball, and it's like, no, we're not going yet. Like
Yes.
the ball isn't in play yet, you know. So I ended up going in front of home plate. So
Yep. Totally understandable. Cool. All right. Now I got to break out my props here a little bit. Okay. So, Nash, if you're having issues, try logging in and logging back out to the Zoom if you are. Okay, so clearing the catcher. You are going to hear me say left a lot tonight because we're going to do a lot of stuff with our lefts. So I got my nifty mask I got it here. So this is my umpire mask. So when I have my umpire mask on, I'm going to be like this. And this is where it gets really funny. And I'm having my hand with my left hand here. When I take it off, I'm going to go here with my left with my clicker still in it. And I'm going to pull up and out just like that over. So when I'm taking it off, it's always going to be with my left hand like this. Because again, I want to keep my right hand open so that I can use this for my indicating hand too as well. We'll get to here in a second, and I think it's the next slide here. Whenever we clear the catcher, so if we have a catcher if we have a play that's anywhere in the field, 99.9% of the time, we want to clear that catcher to the left. So you can see here, based on this, let's say we have a ball to the shortstop, we have a ball to the second baseman, we have a ball to left field, right field, center field, wherever it is, we're always going to clear the catcher to the left. And why we do this is because if there's multiple people on base, we want to try to anticipate where that play is going to go. So just because it gets hit to the shortstop doesn't automatically mean that he's going to throw it over to first base. If there's a player on second base in that situation, maybe he goes to pick off that guy at third base. Being in the field and clearing that catcher to the left is going to give us the best opportunity to get to that play where it needs to go and do those things. If we clear the catcher to the right, like in this situation here, we're going to have not a great angle on second, not a great angle on third, anything. We might have a play at first, but we're still in the bad angle and we're not in the field of play. So always try to get to that good spot we can. Typically, what I like to see is we'll talk about kind of angles and everything too as well. But typically, we want to see you get close to that pitching mound, a little bit below it. But obviously, again, anticipate and kind of go where you think the play is going to go and get yourself in position as best as possible. And then I always say this too, make sure we're hustling, right? Like if we can get as close as we can to that play with still being available for those other plays that are going to happen, then we can get in the best spot to make the best spot on the play or make the best decision for those two as well. And we'll talk about angle first and then getting down the line too, but hustle whenever you can. But again, take your mask off with your left hand and then always have that clicker in the left hand, and we're always clearing the catcher to the left at that point.
I think one thing, Taylor, that I realized last year, and this is just from 1 year of experience, but one thing that we're behind the plate, right? And let's say we don't have a second ump, right? So we basically have control of the entire field.
Yep.
What was difficult for me to realize sometimes is you're so focused on home plate and balls and strikes and what's going on that you forget about who's on first, who's on second, like where's that play going to go? And the more I got into it and the more I did, I was able to kind of rationalize that at the first part of the game or
Yep.
during the game and be able to realize, okay, we got a guy in first and a guy in second. Yes, I'm still worried about home plate and where the balls and strikes are going to go, but I needed to know where everybody else was too. So,
Yes. Yep, for sure. There's definitely multitasking involved. We got to work through that as much as we can with it. So that'll be good. Okay. So positioning. So we talked about here. So I'll go back to this field portion of it too. So really positioning is going to be really big for us. We want to anticipate where that ball is going to go, right? So we want to try to look at where that ball is being fielded, where it's going in the field of play. We want to position ourselves where we think that is going to be to make ourselves in the best spot that we can make the best decision on plays and give the best angles we can. Biggest thing with this one, and I want to say it's on the next slide here. Yeah, right here. We want to get our angle first. So I'm going to try my best to do this over Zoom, like maybe do some more annotations here. So what I mean by that is we want to get an angle first that's going to give us the best spot to see what we can, and then we're going to try to get distance. So let's say, for instance, ball gets hit to the shortstop here, right? We just have a routine play at first base. We're all of a sudden behind the catcher here. We want to try to get out first here to get an angle. So what I mean by angle is we want to be able to see that foot from the first baseman. And we also want to be able to see that foot from that batter. So if I need to get out here first and be able to see kind of across like this, biggest thing is I don't want to be straight lined is the word that I like to use for by that first that base runner that's going to first base. So I want to get angle first. And then let me erase this real quick. Then once we get that, so we're going to get our angle, then we're going to get distance. So distance is basically how close can we get to that play. So if we can't get, because, you know, if it's a line hard shot to that shortstop and we can only get out to here, totally fine. But we want to try to get as close as we can by hustling as much as we can down that line. It's going to get us closer so we can see more detail of that play so that we can make the best call that we can at that point. The biggest thing with distance is we want to make sure we get that distance, but as soon as that ball is getting coming out of that shortstop's hand, we want to freeze. What I always tell umpires is if you're running and your head's bobbing up and down, it's gonna be a lot harder to focus on that specific play. Whereas if we can freeze, so if we get all the way out to here as soon as that shortstop throws over, we can freeze here. We can make a really good just, hey, okay, I have a really good focus on that specific play. I can hear that glove that's coming from the first baseman to see if he catches it. I can see that first base, the runner that's going to first base and see him touching that base. And then I can make that decision on if he's out or if he's safe in that situation. So again, we really want to get that angle and then we want to get distance after that too as well. One thing I will use as my kind of good words here is pause, read, and react with it. So again, in that situation that we have with first here, we're going to get to that point where we're freezing or pausing to make that play. Then we're going to read the situation, right? So with a routine play at first base, we're going to hear that glove of that first baseman, but we're also going to watch the foot of that runner to see what happens. Let's say in an instance here, that it's a pretty easy routine play of the shortstop. And let's say that first baseman, we hear that pop of that glove before we see the runner touch first base there. So we're reading it to say, okay, I heard that glove, the pop of that glove, or I saw that the first baseman caught it before that runner touched first base. So that's you reading the situation really at that point. And then from there, we're going to react. So we're going to make the call. So we can say, hey, I saw or I heard that the first baseman caught it before that guy touched first base. So I'm going to react. I'm going to call him out at that point. Obviously, it's a closer play. I'm going to, really sell it. If it's a pretty routine one, I'm just going to call him out at that point too as well. So really pause reading and reacting with it. Other situations, so if we have a close play at first base where we have a slide or anything like that, We're pausing, we're gonna read that situation, we're gonna react to it. And then what I'll do in some situations, and I'll explain if it's a close play. So let's say we have a bang bang play at home plate, ball's coming from the outfield, catcher grabs it, goes and tries to tag the runner out at home plate that's sliding in, and he gets under the tag. I'll sometimes we'll go like he's safe, runner got under the tag, or he's out, he got him before or anything like that. So I'm really explaining my observation there before the coach even asks me. Because in some of those such close situations, they're probably going to ask you questions like, "Hey, what'd you see on that play?" So I could be like, "He got under the tag," or if the first baseman pulled his foot, and be like, "No, he's safe." First baseman pulled his foot. You're just doing what we call preventative umpiring, where we're basically explaining that situation before the coach even asks to it. So they already have a description or what your answer would be to what you saw in those situations. So really just using those as much as we can. But again, we really want to make sure that we're pausing, we're reading and reacting to those plays and really taking our time. You don't have to call stuff right away. We can take that extra half second to a second to really let that play sink in and then to make the right call with it. Last thing we want to do is make a knee-jerk reaction and all of a sudden it's a close play at home and you think you got him out, but then he drops the ball. And so you call him out and you're like, no, actually he's safe. And you're having to do all this kind of, you know, confusion and try to explain yourself a little bit. So take your time with it when you can and really try to make the right call. Because at the end of the day, if we get the right call, that's really the biggest thing that we want to see from our umpires.
So, quick question. Stolen bases to second.
Yes.
I don't know if you'll cover that later, but you really can't react and yeah, do the right way. You can't get out there, right? You don't have that time.
I'm going to say can't is probably not the word I would use. It is definitely a harder play, but if you can hustle as much as you can to get out to that play and get your best angle, you're obviously not going to be as good of an angle as like a base umpire is, right? Like that's unheard of. But we should still be able to get out in time behind that from that catcher and still get a good enough angle where we can see that play at second base. Like you said, 90-foot fields, it gets really tough.
Yeah.
Understand that.
Older levels, it's really hard, and younger
Yes.
levels, it's going to be easier. Yeah.
Yep. But we want to do our best to help us get in the best positioning so we can call that. And then we can only call what we can see, right? Like if it all of a sudden you got tagged from behind or something and we're just unsure about it, we're going to go with all the knowledge that we have at that point and make that call off of it. Sometimes we're going to be wrong. It just happens, right? Like there's only so much that can be expected of a one-man umpire. But I'm not going to let a coach think that I didn't get in place and get in good position and have him use that against me. Whereas if I can get in good
Yeah.
position, I can really sell the call, then he's not going to say boo about, what I called down at second base or anything like that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Braden here is asking, what are the ages they can steal and what are the rules on that? We will get to that. So hold that question and we'll get to that too in a bit. I'm going to skip two-man mechanics here. We're going to talk about that in mechanics training. So no worry about that piece of it. All right. Question time. Talked about this just a little bit ago. For anyone that's audacious again, what hand should you always take your mask off with, and which side should you always clear the catcher? The answer is
Left.
left. Perfect. Thank you, Ian. Appreciate it. Always left. Again, there are very, very few situations where I would ever go to the right, and I'm not even going to explain it because I always want everyone to go to the left. So making sure we're always clearing that catcher to the left, always grabbing our mask off with our left hand, going to just put us in the best spot to be as successful as we can with it. So yes, left field and left hand with our mask there. Lunch and chat too. Great. Any questions on mechanics before we get on to the next section here?
Yeah, is a lot of this going to be covered in the mechanics training?
Will be, yeah. So we'll get you out on again, I'm calling it a field, but it's a court. And you'll be able to do firsthand, we'll get in lines and do our strike calls. We'll talk to people about getting into positioning. We'll talk about two-man mechanics. We'll get slot positions. So we'll go over that and really be more of a hands-on experience at that point. Cool. Any other questions? Beautiful. All right, we're moving along here. All right. So getting into the rules thing. So again, we're just going over rules that are more specific with umpires, and what we need to do as umpires to call the rules that we're seeing. So a pretty basic one here is our hit by pitch, right? So biggest thing with the hit by pitch is ball is going to be immediately dead. So, we're going to call it dead ball. We're going to get our hands in the air. We're going to call it dead. Does not matter if it's a swinging dead ball or a swinging hit by pitch or a regular hit by pitch. We're always going to call it dead no matter what. When that happens, we're going to throw our hands in the air and we're going to say dead ball. We're going to call a hit by pitch at that point. And then we're going to, if it's a, not a swinging one, we're going to point over to the first base and say, hey, take your base at that point. So we're signaling in those situations. Now, on the contrary, if we have a situation where, pitcher's got a nasty curveball or something and, batter's up the plate, he swings his bat, it goes through the strike zone and he gets hit in the shoulder or gets hit in the chest or anything like that. That's what we're going to call a dead ball strike. So in that situation, because it hit him, we're still going to call the ball immediately dead. But then because he swung the bat, it's what we call a dead ball strike, and it's just going to be a strike on the batter. If it's a third strike, it's going to be like every other swinging strike. That batter would be out in that situation. If it's their first or second, obviously it would just be a strike at that point. So really key or really thing key there with that is if they swing, it's still a strike. They don't get first base just because they got hit. Because they swung through that strike zone, it would be a still strike at that point. Okay, now a question for anyone in the group again that is feeling courageous with it. So this is a very misconcept rule or a common rule that coaches and players will strew wrong a little bit. So let's say we have a situation, right, where we have our hands and player gets hit in the hands with the bat in their hands. Is that a foul ball or is that a hit by pitch? And I'll see if anyone is courageous enough to come off mute and answer it. All right, I'm seeing some hit by pitches. Does anyone want to explain to me why it is a
If
hit
he
by
swings, that's a strike.
Perfect. Okay, what if they don't swing?
Then it's a hit batter.
Hit batter. Perfect. Good. I'm wanting someone to get it wrong so I can explain my rule, but that's okay.
So I got it right?
You got it right, Brad.
See, I've been coaching for a long time.
You knew the rule already.
Yeah.
It is a hit by pitch. A rule that is misinterpreted a lot of times with coaches and players is basically saying like, hey, that their hands are part of your bat, so that's got to be a foul ball, right? Or that's got to be a strike in that instance. And really, what I always ask people is, were you born with a bat in your hands? And they're gonna be like, well, no. And then I'm like, okay, so the hands are not part of the bat then at that point. So, really big thing there, right? Again, it's gonna be a hit by pitch. It's not going to be a foul ball or anything like that. So just making sure we're calling that a dead ball at that situation too as well. It's hard to tell sometimes. So one kind of key thing that I always like to tell umpires is if it's really close to telling if it's a foul ball, so if it hits like the the handle of the bat, or it's hitting the actual hands, if it's making more of a thud sound, it's probably going to be their hands. If it's making more of a hollow or a ting sound, it's going to be the bat most of the times. So, try to do that. It's really tough sometimes. You just got to go with the best of your knowledge whenever you can. But, try to get out of those situations and try to go with what you think is the best or your gut feeling, and then just go with it, even though it may not be correct in some of those situations. All right. So from a mechanics perspective, I have a really good video here that we can show. Okay. So this is the Yankees. It's our favorite guy, A-Rod, which I always say I used to hate on A-Rod, but now he owns the Timberwolves, so can't really hate him on too much anymore. Let's be really key on what's going on right now. So you can see we have a guy in first base here, and we have 2 outs. We have a 1-0 count right now, and the pitcher's about to pitch it here. This guy at first is going to steal second base. And so we'll see what happens here and what the umpire does. So you can see ball's coming in, and it's a hard angle to see here, but it does hit A-Rod in the stomach area or the elbow, wherever it is, but it does hit him. So as an umpire, right, we need to call that ball dead. That guy from first is going to second base. If this catcher catches it, he's probably going to make the assumption that it didn't hit it, so he's going to want to throw down to second base at that point. So us as umpires need to make it very clear that, hey, this was a hit by pitch. This is going to be a dead ball situation. So you can see here, boom, umpire pops up super quick. Like it is, boom, like that. And he gets his hands really high in the air just to let everyone know, hey, this is a hit by pitch. You can see like the catcher right here is already turning to throw over to second base. And this umpire's like, ball's dead. We don't want anything happening. We don't want to get anyone injured. We're calling this ball dead as much as we can or quickly as we can as possible. Then from there, he's going to walk out a little bit and he's going to point over to first base. The one thing I will say, and it's different because it's a hit by pitch situation. So the only difference I would say with mechanic wise is I'd want to use my left hand. Right hand is going to indicate strike a lot of times. So we want to try to point with our left hand, but you can tell he's telling the guy, hey, you get first base in an instance. So again, he's being very loud, which you can't really tell in this video, but he's very loud. He's making his presence known and getting really high with that so that he can call that play. And then obviously this tells the catcher, hey, don't throw it down to second base. And that guy at second just goes, or the guy that was stealing second just goes to second at that point too as well. So again, biggest thing here, we just want to make sure that we're doing is getting ourselves known and calling dead ball as soon as possible with those. So really good situation for hit by pitch as well. All right. Cool. Okay. Fair and foul ball. This one I would say is, again, pretty self-explanatory. Two things I want to talk about with fair and foul ball that I think really are important to umpires. The first thing is going to be the touch rule. So what I mean by the touch rule, and I'm going to just do my best to annotate this as best as possible. So let's say we have, can I do like 3D imaging here? Let's say this is the foul line, and I'm going to do actually this. This will be better. All right. Let's say this is the foul line. We have a top-down approach. This is fair territory. This is foul territory, like that. Wow, I can actually write. That's so cool. Okay, so touch rule. Really, the biggest thing that I'll very, again, misinterpretation, misconception of the rule. When we have a foul ball, especially on this infield here, let's say we have a foul ball that's right in this section here, and the pitcher's coming over to catch it in the air. With a fair ball and foul ball, we're not going to be looking to see where it lands. If there's contact made with a player or with like a glove or anything like that, we're going to do what we call the touch rule. So basically, if a guy goes to field it like this, wherever he touches it, we're going to take a line and go straight down from where that first contact was made. So if I'm a pitcher, right, and it hits off the heel of my glove here, I'm going to take a line that goes straight down. So let's say that the contact is made right here in fair territory. And then when he loses it, boom, it pops over to foul territory there. When we're talking about the touch rule right here, it does not matter where it lands. We're going to determine if it's fair or foul where he touches it. So in this scenario, where he's touching it is in fair territory. So even though it landed in foul territory, it will still be a fair ball at that instance. Obviously, the other side of it is if he's touching it in foul territory. So again, touch rule, he tips it and he touches it in foul territory. If it all of a sudden bounces into fair territory, we're still going to call it a foul ball because that's where it was first touched in that situation. So really key there again, just knowing that piece of it. Same thing will happen in the outfield. If it's a completely pop fly ball, we're going to try our best to do if it's a touch rule in that situation. If he touches it right on the line, that will still be a fair ball. So the line is fair in a lot of those situations. So if he touches it in fair and it falls into foul territory, it's still going to be a fair ball in that situation too as well. Again, misconceived rule or misinterpreted rule a lot of times, so make sure we're knowing that. The other piece is this front of the first base and third base line. So you've probably seen it a lot of times, right? Ball gets hit down that third base side, it bounces once here, and then it passes over that third base line, or maybe it does the same thing on that first base side too as well. Us as umpires, we just want to make sure that it passes over that base before going into foul territory. So either passes or is on the inside or the fair territory side of it. If in a situation, ball hits once here in fair territory, but then it lines over and does not pass over that base, it's going to be a foul ball situation. So we want to make sure that it lands in there and does that. If it's a pop fly and it goes to the outfield, doesn't matter if it needs to be, passing over the base or anything like that. Again, we just apply that touch rule to things. So if he touches it here, goes into foul territory, it's going to be a fair ball. Obviously, if it touches here, going to be a foul ball in that situation too as well. So really knowing those portions of it. The other thing too is here is our markers. So our first base and our third base, and also home, we can call a marker too as well. First base and third base are going to be in fair territory, and same thing with home plate. So those all bases are in fair territory. So if it hits off this base, going to be a fair ball. If it obviously, goes over the base, it's going to be a fair ball. Any of those situations is going to happen. It just has to make sure it passes over those bases if it hits the ground first at that situation too as well. If it lands right on home plate, it's going to be a fair ball. Again, home plate's in fair territory, same with third base and same with first base too as well. So really knowing those as much as you can to determine on those high, line shots or those, really hot ground balls to make sure to see if it is a fair ball or if it's going to be a foul ball in that situation. Perfect. Why I'm glad you're taking a lot of notes. Any questions on fair and foul ball or the touch rule? I would say those are two very key things with baseball and key things with umpires that we want to know to help us make the best decision or make the right call at that point. Cool. All right. Okay, foul tip we talked about, right? That's a foul tip. Key thing with the foul tip is the ball must go sharply directly into the into the catcher's hands, quote unquote hands, and be legally caught. Jordan had sent me a play about 2 weeks ago where, it would seem like a foul tip, but the catcher kind of hit off his, chest pad and then he caught it with his hands. And so in that instance, we wouldn't call a foul tip. It's just a foul ball at that instance or in that scenario. And so if it's just a foul ball, it's technically going to be an out because he caught it that way too as well. Only a foul tip is when it sharply and directly hits off the bat and goes directly into the catcher's hand and they catch it cleanly at that point too as well. Key thing with foul tips are live balls. So of course, if we have a foul ball situation, we're going to call the ball immediately dead. If it is a foul tip, runners can still steal at the bases. They can lead off. They can do whatever they want. It's still going to be a live ball at that situation. So you as an umpire are not going to say anything. You're just going to make that foul tip signal, but you're not going to call the play dead or anything like that. You're just going to let it keep going. A lot of times coaches are going to be like, oh, it was a foul ball. Go back to first base. Don't interject yourself into those plays. Let them do what they need to do. It's a pretty easy rule. They should know that too as well. But again, really knowing it's sharply, directly from the bat into the catcher's hand and make sure we legally catch it as well with it. Bunts. So key things here with the bunt situation. It's going to be what we call an offering. So offering, right, is when they put the ball or put the bat out in a bunt situation and the ball has to pass through the strike zone and they still have to be offering for it to be called a strike. A lot of times, right, we'll see batters that will have the bunt out and they'll pull it back before it travels through the strike zone. And so then we would not call it a strike at that point. Of course, we know if it's 2 strikes and it's a foul ball on a bunt, that we are going to call the batter out at that instance. So just know that piece of it. But key thing I would say from an umpire's perspective when we are talking about bunts is we really want to make sure that we're looking at that strike zone and not being distracted by that bat. This is kind of one of those, I think Chris and Brennan talked about dealing with multiple situations. And this is a tough one. So we really need to make, watch for 2 things when that's going on is we need to make sure that they're offering. And if they miss it, if it's still a strike or not. So we still want to stay down in our, zone to see, hey, did that ball pass through that strike zone? So if they pull back, it's not automatically going to be a ball, right? Like if it travels through that strike zone, it's going to be a strike in that instance too as well. Or if it is a ball, did they pull that bat back before the ball had traveled through the strike zone? So really 2 key things there. But again, just try not to be distracted by that bunt or by that bunting situation. We really still want to focus on that strike zone as much as we can with it too as well. I feel like this meme is out of date now too. I feel like it's like 5 years ago, but if anyone's seen the Ken Murphy videos, they're hilarious. Maybe not super safe for work or school, but if whenever you have a chance, just take a look. They're funny. He's a really funny guy.
So if the batter bunts the ball and the catcher is going for it because it's really short and it's not like a down the line or anything, would we as an umpire stay behind the plate until the catcher is cleared out of that area so as to not interfere with them, or would we try and get in front of them?
Yeah, really good question. I would say most situations you're probably not going to have enough time. In that situation, we'll talk about more mechanics. If it's close to the line, we're going to want to actually go, and this is one of the few scenarios where you would kind of clear to the right a little bit. We're going to get on that line to determine if it's going to be a fair ball or foul ball. But to answer your question, Ethan, we'll want to go behind that catcher just so we don't interfere with that play. But then once he does get it, that's when we'll try to get our angle out behind home plates. And then if we have enough time, we'll try to get that distance to get down to first base as quickly as possible. So.
Okay,
All
so
right,
like
thank you.
if the batter like foul tips it back and it hits the catcher's glove, but he doesn't catch it, are the runners still allowed to steal?
So nope. So you're going back to the foul tip situation. So if
Yeah.
it's not caught by that catcher, it's going to be a foul ball situation. So then the play would be automatically dead. We'll get our hands up and call a foul ball. And then the batters or the runners would have to go back to their bases. Only if it gets caught by that catcher cleanly, would the play still be alive at that point. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. If you're a coach, I always tell kids if you see a guy stealing, and it's really hard to make the decision at this point, but if they're stealing, and you think you got a really bad jump and you happen to get a foul tip, just have him drop the ball because then it's going to be a foul ball at that situation and the runner would have to go back to second base. But um, Eason asking what's considered a clean catch. Really good question. I would say anything other than just a normal catch and it goes directly into that catcher's hands is going to be a clean catch. Anything else is going to be not a clean catch. So if they catch it and they fumble it around in their glove, or again, if it hits off their chest protector or something and they catch it, anything like that is not going to be considered cleanly. And you'll know it pretty quickly, right? Like if they just catch it and nothing else happens, that's just going to be a clean catch. And then that's when we would consider it a foul tip situation. Brain said, what if it hits off the catcher's pads and he catches it into is it the batter out? Yes. Yep. So again, if it's not a clean catch, it's a foul ball. So it's like any other foul ball situation where you would call that batter out for a foul ball in that situation too as well. A lot of times it's when a foul tip, maybe it ricochets off a little weird. Not a lot of times will catchers catch it. They either catch it cleanly and it's going to be a foul tip, or they drop it and it's going to be a normal foul ball situation too as well. Good questions.
So when there's sometimes like one strike and the batter like fouls it back and it's cleanly caught by the catcher, what's like the thing where we would call them out? Because there's sometimes where like someone pops it up and a foul ball and an out. So what is like the line that we draw between just a foul ball and an out?
Could you explain it one more time for me, Lincoln?
So like if there's one strike
Yep.
and a batter like hits it back into the catcher's glove, but he
Okay.
tipped it and it's only a strike.
Yep.
But if he like hits it into foul territory and the guy catches it, then he's out. So like what's the like where's the line that we draw that like is the difference?
Yeah, so again, right here. So sharply hit directly goes into it. So right, like if in a normal situation where, maybe he swings through it and the catcher catches it, it's going to be a strike. This is basically kind of the same way. It's just making a very, a ting or a tick sound with it to be considered a foul tip situation. So that would be the only time we would call a foul tip. So it, hits off the batter's bat very, grazes it basically is probably a word you could use, which is not the right word to use, but maybe he grazes it and it goes right directly into that catcher's hand. That's going to be a foul tip. Basically, everything else is what we're going to call a foul ball in that situation too as well. Does that answer your question or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good questions all around. Okay, drop third strikes. So big thing with drop third strikes, only going to be at the 12-year-olds or older ages. So if you're doing a lot of the in-house games, if you're doing 9 through 11-year-olds on the traveling side, this rule will not apply. So it's just going to be for 12-year-olds or up at that point. Biggest thing with drop third strike rules is we want to, as umpires, basically before the play starts or before that batter comes up to bat, we want to determine if the drop third strike rule is an apply or if it's not, because that's going to help us kind of forget about it at that point too as well. Two things that we need to know with a drop third strike situation is uh, and I'll explain the rule actually first. So, rule of a drop third strike is a batter who strikes out can advance to first base if the catcher does not catch the ball cleanly, and then these two things apply with it. So, drop third strike situation, there needs to be less than 2 outs with no runner on first base. Or if there is 2 outs, doesn't matter where the runners are. That's so what I will do in these situations is when a batter comes up to bat, I will ask myself those two questions. Say, okay, is there less than two outs? And if I'm like, okay, let me look at my clicker, I'm looking at it like this, and I'm like, okay, there's one out in this situation. I'm like, okay, there's one out. Then I ask myself the second question, is there a runner on first base? If there's a runner on first base and there's only one out, I'm gonna be like, okay, drop third strike rule is not an apply here. I don't even need to worry about it this instance. If the catcher drops it, it's still going to be an automatic out for that batter. If I go to myself, I'm like, okay, there's one out, and I'm like, okay, there's nobody on first base, then I can be like, all right, drop third strike rule does apply here. So if that, batter swings or if it's a strike and that catcher drops it, that guy from first can then go to second, or that base runner, or that was the batter, it can go to first base in that sense. If I ask myself that first question, say, okay, how many outs are there? And I say there's two outs, I don't even need to ask myself the second question. I can just say, all right, um, you know, automatically there's a drop third strike rule at this point. From a mechanics perspective, if there is a drop third strike situation, if it's a swinging strike, we're just not going to say anything. There are specific mechanics sometimes on how we do drop third strikes. We're not going to worry about those. We're just not going to do anything. We're going to let that batter and that catcher make the determination on that drop third strike situation. Obviously, if it's a non-swinging strike, so the ball goes through the strike zone, we're going to indicate and call a strike like we typically would do. But if that catcher drops it, we're not going to do our punch out or anything like that. We're just going to indicate a strike, and then they kind of figure out the rest from there. And then obviously, then it's just a regular kind of tag situation, or they throw it down to first base to get that force out too as well. So again, we don't want to interject in any of these situations and let the catcher know, let the batter know that's a third strike. We're going to let them make that decision so that we don't, sway one way or the other to help one team out and get an advantage or anything like that. So again, ask yourself those two questions when you're before each of the at bats. It's going to help you lie the wrong way. Eventually, it will just come as second nature to you. As you kind of progress through umpiring, and you won't even have to think about it. But for now, just kind of figuring those things out. And then again, if you're doing the younger ages, don't even have to worry about it. So don't worry about it from that side of it too as well. All right. Another question here, I think. Yeah. All right. So another question for anyone that would like to answer this one. We got a ball that gets hit to the pitcher's mound. It gets there and hits. It does not hit off the pitcher itself. It hits off of the actual rubber. So if you've ever been to one of those places where they have those portable mounds, sometimes they can be a little poppy. If a kid hits it hard enough, it can hit off there pretty hard, or it hits off the mound itself. And this happens, and then it goes and trickles into foul territory here and lays at rest at that point. In this situation, do we have a fair ball and do we have a foul ball? And if so, can anyone explain why or why not? Put him on the spot. Okay, you guys can answer in the chat, but I want to see if anyone can answer it and give me the reason. All right, we got foul balls. Nobody touched it. Perfect. I'll accept those answers in the chat. We are correct. It is going to be a foul ball, right? So again, we're going to get our hands up and call a foul ball. Nobody touched it. The key, kind of what we're looking for there, right? It didn't pass either of those markers. So it didn't pass that third base. It didn't pass that first base situation. It just hit off the mound. It didn't have a player or anything like that. So we don't have the touch rule here. Just hit off there and then went into foul territory. So that's going to be that instance we would call it a foul ball. So, gosh, you guys are good. I thought I would trick you, but nobody's biting on my tricks today. So, all good. Okay. Another question we have here. We got a runner on first base, one out with a 3-1 count on the batter. So again, runner on first, we got one out, 3-1 count. Pitcher winds up to release the ball, which comes inside on the batter. The ball hits the batter's hands, who does not attempt to swing at the ball outside of the strike zone, and the ball ends up going into fair territory. The pitcher picks up the ball in fair territory, throws it to second for the force out, and then the second baseman throws it to first to record the double play to end the inning. In this situation, do we have the correct call here, or what call would we make? Anybody want to do that? All these chats. You guys are too good in the chat here. Everyone's calling dead ball. Perfect. It is a dead ball. In that situation, the batter would take first base. So again, going back to what we talked about it's a hit by pitch, right? Because they hit him in the hands. So even though it went into foul territory, it's automatically going to give you a dead ball. And then we're going to allow that batter to go to first base. And then that person from first base would obviously go to second base in that instance. So know these things when you can in the moment. But yeah, I'm not tricking anyone tonight. Sucks. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Any questions on the basics for bases at all? Or sorry, for batting rules? I totally forgot to show my strike three calls. So I'm just gonna show them now here while we're waiting. These are like semi-final strike three calls.
Got him.
So pull the cord.
Sides, that'd be absolutely perfect location.
I know you said don't make it about yourself, but
What do you
there's
have to do?
several guys on TikTok that are
Yeah.
have a good following, and they're a little loud and boisterous, and they make
Yeah.
it fun.
I think there's a good way to do it and there's a bad way to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
I love the TikTok guys. I think they're doing a really good job from informational. I also like to take it with a grain of salt because a lot of times they're doing it for views, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh, exactly. They're all in it about the money.
so I think they're doing a really good job, but I would say take some things, don't take all things from it too as well. So
Both sides.
well, let's see. I think he might do the same strikeout here.
And a strike.
That's not straight there. There's one I had of Tom Hallion, who was oh yeah, that's right, they were talking about strike three. Tom Hallion is a very famous umpire. He's the our A's in the jackpot. If you've ever seen that one, he has a really good strike three call too as well. So cool. All right. Yes, we're recording all this, guys. So if you missed the Tuesday session, we will have it available in the second one too as well. So, or we'll have the first part available on YouTube. So don't worry about it. All right, got 7:31. Let's continue here too as well. So next thing we're going to talk about is fielding rules here. So fielding is really going to be again with our defense for the most part. This is where we get a little more complicated in the section. So just make sure you're really paying attention and listening to this because a lot of these things are probably going to come up in a normal game situation that you have. For fielding rules, we have our takeouts and we have our force outs with this. Force out, of course, is a batter that's put out who's being forced to go to next base, right? So we have a batter runner that goes to first base and he gets put out at first base there. That's going to be a force out. We have a guy that's on first going to second. Shortstop throws it to second base. That's going to be a force out at that point. The other thing that we have is going to be a tag out. So, of course, we have a runner that's called out of the base path. So, he gets tagged or anything like that. That's what we call a tag out at that point. The two things that we need to know, especially for the first one. So force outs. Let's say we have a force out situation. So, you have a guy on third base and he's really fast and you have two outs and the batter's up to the plate. He hits it to the shortstop, throws it over to first base, and that batter or that runner from third makes it home before, that force out is made at first. Even in that situation, a force out, if it's the third out, no run can score on that. So just know that, hey, if there's a force out, it's what it was at the beginning of the play, so no run can score at that portion of it. For a takeout situation, though, this is going to be more what we call a timing play. So as a one-man umpire, again, this is a hard situation. What we want to do as umpires is we want to determine if that run made it to home plate before that tag out situation happens. So again, really common situation is you have a guy on second base and ball gets hit into the outfield. That guy from second's coming around to score. And that guy that hit it in the outfield, all of a sudden he's trying to stretch that single into a double now, and he's all of a sudden going to second base. So you as an umpire, right, are going to try to get out to second base to make that call. And you see all of a sudden he gets tagged out for that third out. What we like to do is we want our umpires to turn around as quickly as we can and really make the assumption to determine if that run got home or not. So, of course, we know we don't have eyes in the back of our head. So what I always like to do is kind of use where that runner is that made it home and see where he is to kind of gauge where we think it's, if he made it home before that takeout situation. If he's already in the dugout by the time that you turned around, probably made it home before he made it to home base before that takeout happened. So I would count the run at that instance. If he has just touched the base when you're turning around, think about the time it takes for you to turn your head around that. Probably did not make it to home base before that tag out. If it's really close, though, I typically will just give the run. It's hard to explain why he didn't count that run versus did, but it does put us in tough situations sometimes. So we just want to go what's the best knowledge that we have to make that decision. And again, it's a judgment call, so we want to do our best to determine if that takeout happened or if it did not at that point. So again, takeout situations, timing. So we want to make sure we look to see when that takeout occurred, determine if that run scores. On a force out situation, automatically run is not going to count at that instance, no matter what the timing was too as well. Cool. Infield fly roll. Who was it that asked me about this? You read my mind, whoever it was. Easton, I think, had a question to go back to this. Would it be a force-out takeout if the runner going to second and the runner in first is out and you try the person to go second up? So would it be a force or a takeout if there's a runner going to second and you get the runner going to first out and try to get the person going to second out? So in that situation, so I guess I think what I'm hearing, what you're asking is, let's say we got a runner on first base and ball gets hit to the second baseman. And let's say we have one out in this situation. If the ball gets hit to the second baseman and instead of going to second base, he decides to throw it to first base to get that force out, that first out, Easton, would be a force out. But then as soon as we get that force out, that runner that's going to second base is no longer forced to go to second base, right? Because that person was already put out. He can technically go back to first base or he can go to second base at that point. So when that happens, it's no longer a force out for that person at second. It then becomes a tag out situation. If they get into a pickle or anything like that, we can, it's just a tag out. So if there's a guy at third going home, then it would just be a timing play of that situation. But as soon as we get that runner out at first, it takes that, obligation of that runner from going first to second to go to second. So they could technically go back to first at that point. Cool. Okay. I think that's all we have for questions. Sweet. Okay. Infield fly roll. So this is a very tricky one too as well. So same thing what we did with the drop third strike situations. With infield fly rule, we want to try to determine if we have an infield fly rule situation before the at bat even happens. So I'll read the rule here first and I'll explain it. An infield fly rule is a fair fly ball, not including a line drive or a bunt, which can be caught by an infielder with ordinary effort when I should say when a runner is first, or no, I actually say that when first and second or first, second, and third bases are occupied before two are out. So to break that rule down, we'll start with the first part. Ordinary effort, right? So if we have a ball that is a line drive and a shortstop has to dive for it, or he makes a Derek Jeter amazing play, that is not what we would call ordinary efforts. An ordinary effort would be something where it gets hit in the air, has a nice lob to it, any of the fielders can safely get underneath it. They don't have to rush over to it, anything like that. And they can catch it with, just ordinary effort at that point. So that's what we're going to call ordinary effort. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to, again, go back to, as an umpire, we're going to determine if it's an infield fly rule or if it's not. In that situation, we're going to ask ourselves two questions. The first one we're going to ask us again is, how many outs do we have? So if we go and say, okay, we have one out, and all right, let's make sure we're good in the chat here, guys. If we have one out, then we're saying, okay, let's go to the next situation. And then we have to ask ourselves, is there a runner on first and second, or is there a runner on first, second, and third? If we answer yes to both those questions, we do have an infield fly situation. So again, I can then go back and say, hey, I have, less than two outs. I have at least a runner on first and second. It's going to be the infield fly situation. If I have two outs, so if I ask myself the question, hey, is there less than two outs? If there's two outs, then I automatically can be like, all right, infield fly situation does not occur. So then I don't need to do anything at that point too as well. If I say, hey, I have one out, but there's not a runner on first base, then I can also answer no to my second question. And then I'm like, all right, there's no infield fly rule. So again, just asking those two questions. If we can say yes to both of those, then we have an infield fly situation. If we have those, what we want to do is we want to signal it when it's at its peak. So of course we know when it kind of hits that apex, we can then determine if it's going to be a infield fly. We're going to point at it in the air, and so you can't really see, but I'm pointing up, and I'm going to go infield fly, batters out. So I'm communicating to the fielders and I'm communicating to the batters that, hey, the batter is automatically out in this situation. The other thing to note with this is as soon as we call that batter out, it's just going to be like a normal fly ball situation. So, people always say like, hey, runners can advance at their own risk and everything. And it's like, what does that mean, right? Really with that is it's just gonna be like a normal situation. So if it gets caught by the second baseman, the batter's already out no matter what, but then the runners, whoever's on base, would need to go back and tag like you would do in a regular fly ball situation. If the shortstop gets underneath it and he drops the ball, that batter runner is still going to be out, but then our runners who are on the bases do not need to tag and they can advance at their own risk at that point. So just because it's name field fly, the rules will still apply just in a normal fly ball situation at that point. So again, key thing to know with that one. I think a lot of times umpires will think, oh, even though it's the fielder doesn't catch it, he still has to go back and tag because it was an infield fly roll. It's like, nope, just has to catch it. If it's, then they have to tag. If they don't catch it, they don't have to too as well.
Yeah, I've seen some that have should have been called over the years, but
Yep.
so what's the golden rule? If it's hit directly at the, say it's the second baseman, if it's hit directly at him, it's an infield fly. If he's got to run for it and he misses it, what?
Yes, really good question, Brett. So
I've seen both. I'm confused.
yeah, it is judgment at this point, right? Like in your determination as an umpire, if you think that that fielder can catch it with ordinary effort, then I would call it an infield fly. If
Okay.
you do not deem it as an ordinary effort, so if it does not have a nice lob on it, if it's kind of a line drive but kind of not, and it gets to be really tough and it's like really quick, leave it then at that point, right? Like let's not call it an infield fly. Really, what this is just trying to it's trying to not deceive runners is really what the whole point of the rule is. It's basically saying like we need to call this person out so that the fielders don't take advantage of it or anything like that too as well. So
Yeah, like you've seen at the lower levels, they'll purposely drop one
yeah,
to try and get the double play, right?
which there is a rule about that too as well.
Is there?
If your glove makes contact, it's not a knock it on anyway. But yes,
Okay.
yeah. So again, judgment call, right? You're determining if it's ordinary effort. From a like field perspective, typically, the golden rule or the general rule of thumb is, where the dirt meets the grass kind of situation.
Hmm.
But I can't remember exactly where the rule is, and there probably is like a specifics where that determination is. But if that shortstop is like all of a sudden just like kind of on the grass and not completely on the grass, or maybe he's like just over the grass line, you can still consider that part of the infield. And you could still call an infield fly in that situation because, right, you're not going to know where that ball would land or where that fielder is going to be when you're calling at the apex. You're
Yeah.
just using your best judgment at that point to determine, where it is.
All right.
If it gets all the way to the center fielder, then we're not going to call it an infield fly. We're just going to let it be a just regular pop fly. So, yeah. Question I saw in here is what ages does this apply to? So, contrary to I went too far back, to the drop third strike, this is going to apply at all ages. So if you're doing 9, 10s, 11-year-olds, infield fly rule will still apply. I don't think there are really any of our leagues that say specifically no infield fly rule. There may be a couple like on like the in-house developmental ages. But for traveling for sure, it's going to be all of our ages that we will have an infield fly rule in this situation. Braden asked, I'm pretty sure you didn't say it, but what is the hand signal for fly? Yep, good question. So I'm going to back up a little bit here. So infield fly, we're going to point up in the air at the ball like this, and then we're going to say infield fly, and then we're going to go batters out like that. So we're basically just calling that infield fly with our hand pointing up in the air. In a two-man situation, we'll get into that, but it's still going to be the home plates, but you're basically just going to point in the air and then make it very loud, right? You want to make sure you're communicating as much as possible so there's no confusion going on during that play situation. So good questions. Any other questions on infield fly here? This is a tough one. This is probably one of the hardest rules beyond obstruction and interference. I would say that it's hard to call sometimes, right? And so we want to try our best to be proactive as umpires and try to make that determination before the play happens, so that when it does happen, we can be ready to make that call whenever possible too as well. Yes, Brantley, runners have to be on first and second at least. If there is bases loaded, infield fly rule would still apply. If there is not a runner on first or not a runner on second, then we would not have an infield fly situation. Good. Okay, out of play situations here. I'm only going to cover three. There's a lot of different rules with this, but to make it simple, we'll just cover the common ones. This document is on Arbiter, so we have it as a form. Again, if you are a Wiper Lake or Hudson guy, let me know. I can send it to you too as well. But this is going to be our out of play situation. So, of course, we have our normal one, right? Ball goes out of the play from the infield. So we have ball gets hit to the shortstop, nobody on base. Shortstop boots it, throws it over the first baseman, and it goes out of play beyond. We would apply this yellow one right here. And that's going to be the first throw by the infielder, and ball goes out of play or lodged into the under the fence. And we would give them 2 bases, and it's going to be from the time of the pitch. So another scenario, if we have a guy on second base, ball gets hit to the second baseman. Again, second baseman booches it. It goes out of play at that instance. Even though that runner has not made it to third base or anything, it does not matter about establishing. That runner that was at second base automatically gets home because he was established on second base when the time of the pitch happened at that point. So again, first throw from the infielder, ball goes out of play or lodged into the fence. We're going to go in 2 bases from the start of the pitch. Pitcher pass balls is going to be another one, right? We have some fences that are not great. Things get lodged underneath. Something happens where it hits off the catcher and then it goes into the dugout, entryway or anything like that. From that one, we are going to call, and I think it's right here. Pitch thrown right here. Pitch thrown out of play or a ball 4. So with this one, we're just going to give 1 base again from the start of the pitch. So pretty simple. So if there's a runner on second base, ball goes out of play, we're just going to give them third base. And really what these out of bases are basically awarding to say, if the ball did not go out of play, where would this runner, reasonably get, or where do we think they would have gotten? So it's really just trying to correct a lot of those fields that aren't fully enclosed, so we have these weird situations. One of the ones that I see the most that gets misconstrued, or again, is a misconception of the rule, is when we have pickoff plays. So this is going to be any ages 12 and above, and how we determine when a person's a fielder and when they are a pitcher. So if we have a pitching mound, and I'm going to do little notes here again. So we have a pitching mound just like this, right? This is the foot of the pitcher right here. So they're engaged with the mound like this. If they spin like they're a righty, or they throw her to first base and it goes out of play, they're going to be considered a pitcher. So if that happens, it's going to be the pitch thrown out of play. So it's just going to be 1 base there too as well. If they step backwards and they go off of the pitching mound, and then they throw over to the first baseman or third baseman or whatever it is, they then become a fielder. So if that ball goes out of play, we're going to apply this yellow one down here, and it's going to be 2 bases from the start of the pitch. So I'll do that one more time. So if we have a pitching mound like this, they step off that base there. They are now considered a fielder. Because they're no longer engaged with the rubber at that point, they're going to be considered a fielder. So once they're a fielder, it's going to be this yellow portion down here, where if they throw it out of play, it's going to be that first throw by the infielder, because again, they're not a pitcher, so they're considered an infielder at that point. Goes out of play, we're going to give them 2 bases. So if you got a guy in first base, guy steps off, throws over to first base, it goes out of play. Technically, we'd give that guy at first base 2 bases, and he'd get third base then at that point. So just know that kind of rule with it. The last one, and I lied, it was four, not three, is going to be this bottom orange one here too as well. So for any subsequent play by an infielder or by any throw by an outfielder, the ball goes out of play or lodges in under the fence, it's going to be two bases from the throw. So if we have a ball from the outfield, right? So if we guy from center field and he's thrown to third base or something like that, and he throws it out of play, we're going to try our best to determine where those runners were at when that throw happened. And we're going to give the batters and the runner two bases from that throw at that point. So that was the hardest one because it's hard to determine at the time when that throw happened, where all the runners were at that situation. So just use your best efforts to determine it. And what I mean by where they're at is if they've touched a base and are going to the next base, they are legally established with that individual base at that point. So if they've touched first and they're going to second, they're still only established or legally been on first base. So if the ball goes out of play from a fielder, we'd give them third base or whatever we need to do. So just know that. Any questions or any other situation that people wanted to go over from a ball out of play situation here? Cool.
I gotta say, I didn't know that the step off, say if you're throwing at first and it's an overthrow, he gets two bases.
Yes. Again,
A lot of umps don't know that because
correct. And a lot of coaches don't know it.
they've only given the one for
Yeah,
us.
you just go with it. And it
That's
happens.
almost like happens every game for us.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, it's now you have it in your repertoire.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't want to say it if it happens to be with your
Yeah.
team, but no, I'm just kidding. Okay, catch versus trap here. So trap is basically when a fielder attempts to catch the batted ball in the air, but the ball hits the ground and goes into the fielder's glove. So you can see this picture right here. You can't see it super well, but the ball's hitting the ground and then it's going into that fielder's glove at that point. So we call that a trap. So basically, it's not an out. They're not catching it. We're calling it a trap at that point. From an umpire's perspective, biggest thing with this one is we want to determine right away if that is a catch or if that is a trap because we want to let the base runners know if they can continue on their path or if they need to go back and tag out at that point. So again, really tough being a home plate umpire determining if it's going to be a trap or if it's a catch at this point. But we're again going to use our best judgment here. We're going to get out and hustle so we can get as close as we can to determine that play. If we determine it's a catch, we're going to be really loud and we're going to say, batter's out. That's a catch, batter's out. Whatever we need to do to communicate that, hey, you runners need to go back to your base because that was a catch. If you think it's a trap, so you think it hits the ground first before it goes into the glove of that fielder, you're going to go like, no, safe, no catch, or like, whatever you need to do to determine to be like, hey, that batter's not out because that was a trap. So you'll be like, that's, safe, not a catch, or no catch, or whatever you need to do, and really make it communicative loud because obviously then those runners need to advance. If it's force out, that batter runner can still go to first base, whatever they need to do. So again, in those situations, we want to be very loud and make sure everybody hears and knows what our call is. This is a tough one too because you don't have a lot of time to make it. So again, go with your best judgment, go with what your gut call is, and just go with it based on your angles that you can see with it too as well. So again, know if it's a trap or know if it's a catch at that point too as well. All right, I'll stop there. Any questions on what we've gone over so far? Now we're getting into the fun stuff. Cool. Okay. So last thing we'll talk about fielding here is going to be obstruction and interference. So again, a lot of people will use this rule interchangeably. A lot of people will call things interference when they're obstruction, and they'll call obstruction when it's interference. Or they'll just use the word interference, which I'm totally fine if you use the word interference. As long as you get the play right, that's really all that matters. I do want to people apply the rules correctly, but it happens. I think interference is definitely the more popular term to use, but there is a difference between the two of them. So obstructions here. So again, I'll read the definition, then I'll explain afterwards. So the definition of obstruction is the act of a fielder who, while not in possession of the ball and not in the act of fielding the ball, impedes the progress of the runner. So key things that we have there with a obstruction call. It's the act of the fielder. So it's going to be the defense. right? So it's going to be a defensive player is not in possession or in trying to field the ball, makes contact or doesn't make contact, gets in the way, whatever they do with the runner and stopping them from getting to a base or advancing to the next base at that point. That's going to be what we call obstruction. Key thing with obstruction, it makes the call a lot easier if their contact is made. So what I mean by that is, you have a defensive player, runners running into the base path or running to the next base, and the defense doesn't have the ball and they make contact at that point. Really easy to call obstruction at that point to say, hey, we got obstruction here. Doesn't have to happen though. If there's any type of movement that wouldn't be made as the runner, if they have to go around the fielder, whatever they need to do, we could call obstruction at that point. Another key thing with obstruction is when we call obstruction, basically the way the rule is written or the way we're supposed to apply the rule is we're going to give them what base what base we thought they were to get to. So I'm going to show a couple of YouTube videos here just to kind of get people aware of what obstruction is because it's hard to explain without showing videos here. So we'll go through those real quick and then to kind of explain how we can apply those to different situations. Okay. This first one here I show every single year because I think this is like one of the most cool obstruction plays I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's just always so interesting to me. Okay, so Major League game. We have the World Series. This is the World Series here. Again, let's look at the situation that we have. We have a runner on second and third base, and we have one out. Bottom of the ninth, tie game. Like this is do or die situation, that we have here. Run scores here, the game is over at that point. So again, one out, and we have runners on second and third. I'm gonna turn the sound off because we don't need it. Ball's gonna get hit here to the second baseman who's playing in, obviously, because he wants to try to get that runner at home. We can see that guy from third base here is already making the play to go to home base at that point. And so our second baseman sees that, and they're going to go and throw it at home, and he's going to be thrown out at the plate. If a new major league rule, this would be illegal, but we're not going to say anything because we're taking this as a youth perspective. But in this situation, right, we can see it's out. Umpire's got a really good view here. He's angled well. It probably could be down a low line here, but he's calling it out. So this is going to be an out. So we have two outs right now, okay? Then this catcher is going to look and see that that guy that was at second base is now going to third base. So he's going to then throw it down to third base here to try to get that third out to end the inning. So he throws it down there. And we can see here, from most situations, ball's coming in late, guy slides into third base here, he's safe. But that third baseman's kind of playing up, playing closer to the foul line, so the ball's going to get past him at that point. And then the ball goes to left field. You're going to see the left fielder come into play because he's doing a really good job backuping. But that's not what we want to focus on. We're going to want to focus on this third baseman right here. So watch what he does with his feet and his legs, and you tell me what you think. So you can see he puts his feet up like that, and that fielder, that base runner, trips over the third baseman right there. And then as we come home here, that guy throws it down to the plate and he gets thrown out. Now, let's go back to our plays here. And this is where I will ask some of the questions again. So whoever's feeling courageous enough. So in that situation, as the fielder was there and that contact was made, do we feel like one, that the fielder was in possession of the ball, or do we feel like they were in the act of fielding the ball? Anyone want to answer that? You guys are already getting it right.
Runner interference, he gets the base. He's safe.
Yes. So again, we talked about that, right? It's not in the act of fielding the ball, right? This ball's already gotten past them. So he's not in the act of fielding it. He doesn't have the ball or anything like that. The key here, though, when we talk about obstructions, and it's on the actual portions that we have on the slides here, this is going to be what we call a delayed obstruction. So this bottom part right here. So in a delayed obstruction, we're going to let that play finish itself out. And basically, what I mean by that is we're going to let it just keep going and we're going to see what happens. In this case, the catcher throws him out at that point. So in this case, we can see here the home plate umpire calls him safe because there was an obstruction call. So he calls him safe at that point. If that runner makes it home and does not get thrown out at the plate, then we're going to not call the obstruction because they got to that base still, even though the obstruction or even though like contact was made and they were, interacted with it a little bit, because they got the base that they were still going to get to, we're not going to call obstruction at that point. But because obviously this runner gets thrown out at home plate, we would call obstruction at that point to then award him home base. So in this situation, it was the World Series. The game ended on an obstruction call where, the runner was safe at home. And I'll keep going through this real quick, but nobody is happy. This is a very gutsy call made by the third base umpire and by the home plate umpire. But in every right, I think this is the correct call, and I thought the umpires did a really good job and making this call correctly too as well. Any questions on that part of the obstruction? Cool.
No, but a big one I see on obstruction is first base. So you got a first baseman that probably, doesn't know how to play first base. Ball's hitting the outfield, double, triple, and he's going to first base. I've seen it so many times. He's going to first base to make a play. The ball's hitting the outfield. There's not going to be a play at first base, and he's right in the baseline.
Yep.
And then our kid runs into him,
Yep.
slows him down. He gets a double instead of a triple, and
Yeah.
none of the umps ever call that.
So one thing I would say to that, Brett, is if it's again, it's a judgment call, right? Like if I'm an umpire and I deem that I think you could only get to second base at that point, I'm only going to give seven base, and I'm again delayed obstruction. I'm not going to call anything. A lot of times, what I tell coaches, just as a way to get around the rule a little bit and help yourself out, is have that if the umpire obviously sees that obstruction, right? Have them advance or try to advance to the next base to try to, make the umpire call obstruction at that point and then give them third base. If they don't make an attempt to go to third base, typically a lot of times we will not give them third base unless it's a completely obvious that he should have got third base at that point.
Yeah, and they're looking at the ball too, so it's tough when there's only one ump. And I mean, I've been the third base coach, first base coach, and I'll go tell them, between innings, hey, first baseman is always in our batter's running path, and he'll watch, and still nothing usually happens, but
Tough.
it's tough.
Yeah, judgment call again, right? Like you as the umpire make that decision with it. So it's really what you think at that point too as well. But we always want to reward them, right? So like if let's say all of a sudden they get into a pickle or something like that, maybe he goes back to first base. We want to give him second base at that point because we want to reward that individual and not, still fault the team that the obstruction happened against or anything like that. So but yeah, hard to call sometimes, I would say, and our umpires probably don't do the best job at determining or looking what the base runners are happening because they're obviously focused on the ball too as well. So good question. I'm gonna be honest, I'm drawing a blank what happens in this play here, so we're just gonna see what happens and kind of go along with it. So oh yeah, okay, pretty easy one here. All right. So another situation we're gonna have here. So we have one out. There was runners on second and third. Ball gets hit to the shortstop. The shortstop here is going to realize that the guy from second is going to third here, and instead of going over to first base, he's going to throw it to third here. And this runner is going to get into a rundown or a pickle situation. And we're going to see here and watch what the runner does in this situation. So, boom. Obviously, our rundown situation happens. Now, we can see here, and again, using our best efforts, this fielder is going to get in the way. And so you can see here, contact gets made at that point in this situation. Fielder's not able to get out of the way or anything like that. So again, we want to ask ourselves the two questions. Was that fielder, even if contact wasn't made, was he impeding the runner? Was he impeding the runner is the first question. The other two questions is, was he making a play on the ball or was he in possession in the ball? And I can see a lot of people of you here thinking of that. He was not. So yes, again, not making play on the ball, not fielding the ball, impedes the runner, makes contact at this point. In this situation, again, we would have an obstruction. So Brantley, again, totally get the confusion on like obstruction interference, but this is something by that's the defense. So it's going to be an obstruction call at that point. So again, we can see that happens. My guy over here, Tom Hallion, he realizes and sees what happens. So even though that the guy tagged him out, he calls him safe because the obstruction was called. And then in that instance, we're going to give him, I think it's really funny because he messes up on the call actually. Here, you can see he calls him safe and he calls him out. He like points at the guy, he's like, you're out. And he's like, wait a second. Nope, he's not out. Never mind. He's at first base or he goes to third base. So again, because he gets in a rundown, we could say, hey, he was going back to second base, so we're going to give him second base. But again, the whole point of this is not to, hurt the team that the actual thing happens to. We want to penalize the team that made the problem or made the mistake really at that point. So because, the defense team made contact, even if that guy was going back to second base, I'm going to give him third base in that situation because of the obstruction that was made at that point too as well. So any questions on that? So that's basically the obstruction that we have. So those are kind of the main ones that we have. Brett covered a really good one that we see. That is the most kind of common ones. Again, obstruction is going to be delayed. So we're going to wait till that play goes all the way through. If that batter or runner still gets to the spot that they were intending to, we're not going to call obstruction. Obviously, if they get thrown out or goes back to a base, we would call obstruction and give them the base that they should have gotten in that situation. Brantley asks, how many bases do you give a runner? So again, your judgment, you're going to give the bases that you thought that the runner was going to get. So if a guy hits the ball into the gap and, he's turning first base and he runs into first baseman, he gets thrown out at second base. If you thought he was only going to get second base, I would give him second base at that point too as well. So it's really you're determining. In that pickle situation, you could see he was going to third in that situation and when obstruction was made. And so I'm going to give that runner third base at that point because that's where I thought he would have been if that obstruction would not have occurred at that point. Good question. All right, so interference then is going to be on the other side. And you would think, okay, obstructions against the defense. So interference must be against the offense, right? Well, you're only partially right because whoever invented the rules of baseball and made the rules decided to confuse everybody. And you can have interference with an offense, but you can also have it with a defensive player in the form of a catcher. And so obviously a catcher's interference is going to be a pretty simple one, right? We see a lot of time at the younger ages where guy is trying to catch the ball as the catcher and contact is made with that batter. And maybe he makes contact, it goes foul, whatever it does, we would have a catcher's interference. I think it should be an obstruction, but it's a catcher's interference at that point too as well. So, but we'll go back to the catcher's interference here. So, from an interference perspective, it's the act of which a player interferes with, obstructs, impedes, hinders, or confuses any fielder in the attempt of making a play. So again, we have obstruction is the act of a defensive player that is interfering with a runner. But now on the other side of it, we have interference, which is anything by that runner that tries to stop a fielder from making a play on the ball. In a interference, instead of having like a delayed interference, what we call it, we call it a delayed obstruction. In most scenarios that we have, it's going to be an automatic dead ball. So if we have interference, we're going to call the play dead at that point. The only time we wouldn't is if we have a catcher's interference where, catcher tries to catch it, ball hits off or the bat hits off the catcher's glove, and all of a sudden that kid hits a home run into center field because he's juiced, right? Like he can just hit the ball really well. We're not going to call the play, Paul. We're not going to call the play dead right away because that batter hit the home run. We're going to negate that interference, and we would call it. But for most situations, it's going to be an automatic dead ball, and we will call that interference at that point. couple other situations I have with this one. Oops, that's the wrong one first. All right, so this is going to be our most common interference that we have. So again, we're looking at the play here. We have a 3-2 count, we have 2 outs, and we have runners on first and second. This batter is going to hit it down the third base line, and let's see what happens with the fielder and with the runner that's going from second base to third base. So we have a runner there, he hits it down the line, and obviously right now we can see, you know, S is going to hit the fan here. There's going to be some sort of situation that we have with it. So in this situation, you can see there, contact is made with the runner and the fielder who is trying to make a play on the ball. So he's trying to field the ball. The runner hinders, interferes, whatever you want to call it, with that fielder that making the play on the ball. And so in this situation, which I would see we're already ahead of the game, because of this, we would call interference. You can see the third base umpire here does a really good job of calling the play dead. He doesn't do, he doesn't exactly put his hands in the air, which is fine. He kind of like puts them up a little bit and then points. But we're going to call the play dead. We're going to call time. We're going to call it dead ball, whatever we want to do. It doesn't really matter. We're going to call the play dead. And then we're going to call that runner out in this situation for making that violation. And then because this is the third out of the inning, inning will be over at that point. Let's say we only have 2 outs at that point. The reason that we call it dead is because you can see here, right? Fielder tries making the play of the ball and ball gets past the fielder and goes into left field. We want to call it dead right away because if we don't, then that runner that was on first base that's going to second and that batter runner, they can advance and they'll take advantage of that interference call, whatever it is. So that's why in our other guards obstruction and interference, we're going to call that play dead as soon as it happens. If there was 1 out, we would put the runners back to the bases that they have to go to. Unless we have to put a batter runner on first base, then we'd advance. So in this situation, if there is only 1 out and there was a guy was on first going to second and we have the batter runner, we would put that batter runner on first base. And then because that guy that was originally on first base can't go to first base, we would just put him on second base at that point. So it just kind of negates itself and is an out in that situation too as well. So again, this is going to be your most common interference that we have in most situations. Another one that we're going to have here is, when we have a catcher that's trying to throw down to second base and we have a batter. So runners can interfere, but also batters can have interference too as well. So this is our first Twins one of the evening and first and last actually. But you can see here we have 1 out. We have a guy on first base and the guy at first is going to be stealing second here and that catcher is going to be throwing down to second base. So we can see here, I'm going to turn the sound off again. Boom. Ball is going to second base. And we can see that our batter here falls out of the batter's box and onto the base at that point. So then, as we go here, throws it down to second. Our base umpire is calling him safe, but our plate umpire is calling interference at this point. Because of that, we can see in the replay here, the runner or the batter in this instance is impeding the fielder from making a play. And then we would say play on the ball, but he's making a play at this point. Again, I don't know for sure if contact happens or if it doesn't in this instance, but it doesn't matter. If you deem that that batter is interfering with this specific play, we can call that. So you can see that guy calls that interference at that point. Now, I got this play wrong, and so I got called out for it earlier at the other session. In this situation, what we would have is really we're trying to call out whoever is making the violation. So in this situation, because it was the batter that had the interference, we're going to call the batter out at this instance because, again, he was the one that made that interference. And then we're going to make that guy that stole second go back to first base. So again, in this instance, we're going to call the batter out because he was the one that had the violation and he was the one that had the interference call. And then we're going to make that guy from second go back to first base in that instance. So really confusing on that one, but really when you just think about it, again, you want to impose or you want to give the out in that case to whoever made that interference. So again, this was the batter in that situation, so we're going to call them out in that situation. What happened to my team? The runner's out. Yeah, again, I think it's a very misconception rule. This one, not everyone's going to understand it, and I totally get that, especially the youth levels. Some will call the runner out, which is fine. Again, we're calling somebody out. At the end of the day, we want to figure out which team made the violation, and we want to get that right. Let me take that back. It was not, I don't want to call it fine, but at least you're doing something the correct way with it. The way the rule is written, we want to call the batter out in this situation because, again, they're the ones that had the interference at that point. So tough one, very tough one. Any questions on that portion of interference?
Taylor, I got a couple scenarios that I've seen the last couple
Come
years
at
that,
me.
that I'll bring up here. So, let's say runner base is empty even. Pop up into the infield. The kids in the dugout on the batting team start shouting, "I got it, I got it, I got it." Clearly trying to confuse the other team. Ball drops. Is that a legitimate situation to call interference?
It's a really good question. I would say if like a bunch of people are calling it, I really good one. You definitely can. You definitely can. It is, even though it is not the runner itself, it is the opposing team that is hindering at that point. Um, if the kid just like misses it, right? Obviously, I'm probably not going to call it interference. I will try to be proactive in those situations and try to go over ahead of time, or if I can't, um, you know, I'll try to do it after the fact. But if you deem that the fielder, whoever it was, did not catch the ball because he heard I got it, I got it, I got it situations, you could call the runner out in that situation. If he just straight up misses it and they still say, I got it, I got it, I'd probably go to the head coach and just say, Coach, we can't have them doing this. If it happens again, I'm going to call the runner out for interference at that point.
Okay. The second situation, let's say runner on first base, ground ball hit to the second baseman.
Yep.
Not a really hard hit ground ball, but enough for the runner traveling from first to second to kind of position himself and maybe, dance a little bit in front of the second baseman so he can't really see where the ball's coming and then he takes off.
Yep.
Would that possibly be an interference situation?
Yeah, really good one. So biggest thing that I try to do between those two plays, and I'll go back to the interference here, is he doing it purposefully? So if it's something where he just jumps over the ball and he's not, he's just trying to get out of the way, basically, right? I'm probably not going to call interference. But if we look at more of the definition of it, he's probably trying, if he's doing it purposely, he's trying to confuse, right? He's trying to interfere, he's trying to get in the way of that ball or get in the sight line of that fielder. So if they stop and it goes underneath them, I'm probably going to call interference on that runner at that point. So again, judgment call. You make the decision if you think he was purposeful or not of it. But if you think that he didn't, I probably wouldn't call interference in that situation. Make sense?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, again, a lot of it is judgment here, right? I think there are rules and how they're written, and it makes it pretty well and defined, but is a lot of gray area, and so we just have to decide with our best judgment, hey, does this rule apply in those situations? But yeah, two very common ones I've seen before as well. I always think back to, and I'm aging myself and calling myself old. There was an A-Rod play, and I forget where, I think he was on the Yankees at the time, where ball was hit to the shortstop, and he's running from second to third base, and he's running past the short baseman. He's like, I got it. It's my ball. It's my ball. And the short baseman like turns around, and all of a sudden he drops the ball. And none of the umpires caught that he said, I got it. So, A-Rod got to third base, and the, batter runner made it to first base. So, Again, any way that you think that they are trying to get a competitive advantage, or they're trying to confuse that fielder, I typically would consider an interference at that point too as well. So cool, good questions. Any other questions that we have on interference? Cool. Okay. Question we have here. So this goes back to a little farther back. Johnny's up to bat. He slaps the ball into right center field, excuse me. After he has touched first base, he tries for second base, but realizes he's not going to make it and turns back to go to first base. The center fielder then throws the ball into second base, but it slips out of the center fielder's hands. And he throws it into second base, and he overthrows second base, and the ball ends up going into the third base dugout. As an umpire, where do we want to put Johnny for the play? And really, it's between first, second, and third that we think. All right, Chris, I'm gonna look at you. Why do we say second? If you
I
want.
would only advance him the one base because he was
Okay.
already going back to first. So
Sure.
I would only advance him to second base. I would not advance him to third.
Got it. I'm picking on you. I apologize.
I might be wrong. I might be 100% wrong,
Nope,
but
it's all good. So keywords to look at here, right? And it's there. I just put
yep,
it.
I'm 100% wrong.
That's why I picked on you. I apologize.
Yep, nope, yep.
Key thing we want to look at here, right? Like if we go back to our kind of little chart here. We look at this orange section here, right? It's for any subsequent play by an infielder or by any throw by an outfielder. The ball goes out of play or lodged in the fence. It's going to be determined on the base from the throw, and we're going to give them two bases.
Okay.
In this
No,
situation, right?
no, absolutely, 100%. I completely agree. I really, I guess what threw me off is that he was going back towards first,
That's
right?
why I tried to trick you.
Yeah, well, you did. I mean, 100%, man. Like you win, so yeah.
Chris, I know you just got that right because you wanted me to explain it to everybody.
I
So
did. That's what I did.
appreciate
I
you
screwed it
being
up on
helpful.
purpose so you could describe it.
Makes
Yes.
total sense.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yes, in this situation, again, it does not matter where base he's going to. The way this description is written, basically, he's already established on first base before that throw from the outfield happens. So he's already established at first base. And once he throws it out of play, we're going to give him two bases from that throw. So, he already established him first, had not made it to second yet at that point. So we're going to give him third base in this situation too as well. So, yeah, again, very hard rule. If you just give him second base, Chris, I bet nobody none of the coaches, none of the fans is going to say boo about it. Like everyone's just
Yeah.
going to go with your opinion.
I'd have to break out my rule book on that one, I think, and try to figure out where I'm at that point. But I probably like in a game situation, I mean, unless it's like, bottom of the inning, like tie score, we're looking at it, like then I'm going to be 100% looking like the a-hole in that point. But I probably in that situation would only give them second.
Yeah.
But to your point, the rule states he would go to third. So
Correct.
yeah.
Yep. No worries.
Chris, what association do you ump at?
Oh man, I've been all over the
Area.
place. I've been all over the place. So I live in Hudson.
East Metro or no?
Yeah, East Metro always. Always East Metro. Yeah. So
Oh.
Stillwater, Hudson, Woodbury,
Oakdale?
Eastridge, that area. Oakdale, I've done Oakdale too. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, so
Well, I'll make
when I
try
do,
to
I'm gonna
introduce
give you
myself
crap.
when You can. You certainly can. You certainly can. Yep. Yep.
Totally good.
And let's hope that situation doesn't come up so I don't have to deal with it. How about that?
No, all good. Cool. Okay. So we went over the fielding stuff there. So we went over the infield fly, takeouts. We went over balls out of play, catch trap, obstruction, interference. Any questions that you guys have as we kind of finish up with that section there? Cool. All right. Base running, I'm going to go through really quickly here. Pretty simple. We talked about the must slide rule. If you weren't here on the Tuesday session, rewatch the video, but basically it's that we don't have a must slide rule. We want to make sure that we're having our players avoid contact, tell them when in doubt, slide it out. If they make contact, they don't slide, anything like that, we can call them out that situation. So again, just knowing the base rules there. I think somebody had a question earlier about steals. So for most of our associations, especially on the traveling side, for U9 and U10s, it says it in a lot of the rules, and we have some rule differentiating documents. Ball has to cross the plate. They can't lead off. Same thing with U11s. Ball has to leave the pitcher's hand. They can't lead off. A lot of like the second grade or third and fourth and fifth and sixth this does apply to as well. For you, 12 and up, we want to anytime they can steal. So it's just gonna be like a normal baseball situation. And Brett, not to call you out again, but I make sure to put that really specifically here, right? Like we know it's a tough call that we have to make at second base. If we can hustle to make ourselves and put ourselves in the best situation, or the best spot to make that call, that's going to help us out a lot. But it is a long way. It's going to be a tough call. It's probably going to be one of your toughest calls you have as a plate umpire. So we're just going to try our best in those situations to get through
Yeah,
it.
and that's going to be the left, right?
Always
Get
go to the
get that angle.
Yes, correct. Yep, you got it. Stealing second grade. Again, I'm just going to say check the rules. The rules will have to say what you can do. If you don't know the rules, ask the question to the coaches in your pregame conference, just so you're all on the same page. But it's typically, for those younger ages, got to be a certain time that they have to do it too as well. All right, now running lane. So only one thing I'll cover with the running lane situation here is really we want to know when a running lane occurs and when it doesn't. So you can see I bolded and underlined the letters here. A running lane is only going to occur when we have a tag situation. So, in that situation that Brett had talked about earlier, guy hits it to the outfield. He's rounding second base or rounding first base, sorry, and goes like way all out into like, almost the grass when he's going to second base. That is not a running lane because there's not a tag attempt happening. As soon as we have a tag attempt happening, so, we have one of those rundown situations, kind of like we talked about, we're going to take 3 feet on each side of where that running lane is. So where they're going between the bases. And, it's actually where the established running lane is when it starts, but I won't get too complicated. It's going to be 3 feet on each side. Obviously, if they step outside of that 3 feet, we're going to call them out of the running lane or out of the tag line. The running lane. We can call that out in the situation. This is a really tough one, right? Like when a play happens, you're not going to know exactly where 3 feet is on each side. So you're going to use your best judgment at that point again. If they go way outside to avoid a tag attempt, I'm probably going to call them out at that situation. But again, use your best judgment. If they stay within close to 6 feet, I'm probably going to let that play out and kind of go from that side of things to help make my judgment before I call them out of the baseline at that point. But again, only a running lane if there's a tag situation happening. For legal equipment, really, for pitching perspective, basically what I always say with pitching stuff, if you think it's a distraction that they're wearing it, they probably need to take it off. Big ones are going to be jewelry, right? Or armbands, things that aren't a solid color. If they're having batter's gloves that are in their back pocket, chains that are hanging out, sunglasses, anything like that, I'm probably going to call that and say, hey, that's not a legal thing. So I'm going to have them take it off or, stick in their back pockets. The only thing I'll say about sunglasses, we do have some people that have prescription sunglasses, right? They can't see. So if they have prescription sunglasses, we can't tell them they can't take it off. They have to be able to wear that. But if it's like reflective sunglasses or something, I'm typically going to say, hey, you got to take your glasses off. Can't have those on or anything. So
I got a question for you on this one, Tay, really quick. And it's on the arm sleeves. So I had a situation in a game last year where the pitcher was wearing a white arm sleeve, but it was solid, but it was white. And the coach from the opposing team said, we want him to take that off. And is it something that's legal for him to have on a white arm sleeve, or should he be taking that off at that point?
Really good question. I actually need to look up the rule on that one. Like, I know it's changed over the last couple of years, especially from a state high school league.
Yeah.
It used to be that it had to be a black or dark color.
Okay.
So dark gray, blue, or something like that. They may have changed it. I don't know for sure because, like in basketball, it's changed, but that has nothing to do with this. So,
Right.
So I was gonna have the same question, but yeah, my kid is a seventh grader. He's playing JV baseball. And we've played 2 other teams that had their pitchers had white sleeves on and they had to roll them up.
Yeah, and
it is a rule.
I believe
and the team
because it blends with the ball.
Yeah, and the team didn't argue it. Like it wasn't like an argument.
It's got to come from the coach. It's got to come from the other coach.
Yep.
If the other coach doesn't say anything, they can continue on.
Yep. And I didn't get any feedback in regards to it. The kid just took it off. It was not hard, but it was just one.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah. got to be a dark color basically, and it's got to be a solid color too as well. So
Yep.
if they have like
Yep.
a pattern on it, those are also illegal too as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Good question.
I got a question too. For
Yeah.
the stealing stuff in
Yeah.
house, is it like can they take leads?
Yeah, so know the rules. So for the second through sixth grade, they cannot take leads. So second, third grade, they cannot steal. Third and fourth, that's when it hits the backstop, and then fifth and sixth is when it crosses home plate. But they cannot lead off. Only in seventh, eighth grade and up can they actually lead off at that point.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. Okay, real quick, we got 1 minute, and then I'll open it to questions here. From a pitching position, I'm just going to go over a quick kind of box. So, kind of main things I see from box. This is just going to be anyone that's 12-year-olds or up that's doing it. Really, the main things that I'll see with a box situation is going to be coming set, right? Really, the rule is they have to come to what we call a discernible stop. So, make sure they're coming set completely. If they're kind of bouncing or anything like that from the stretch position, we're going to call a balk. If they make any sudden movements, if they move their shoulders, if they jerk their leg, anything like that, that is going to be a balk. If they take their momentum a different direction, so if they go home, but then they throw over to first base, that's going to be a balk. Really, when it comes to balks, there is in the link here, there's a really good explanation here how to do it. So I'm going to post these slides on Arbor. I would suggest if you want to get to know balks, this is a really good YouTube video to talk about the different types of balk situations. But in general, what I always say is if you think it's deception towards a runner or a batter, it's probably a balk at that situation. So really it's trying to make sure that we don't have competitive advantages that are given to the pitching team or the defensive team in that situation too as well.
Are you giving warnings on some of that,
Yeah.
Taylor? Like, especially for the younger kids, like where it's like, hey, they need to come to a definite stop right now, and they're not. So,
Yep.
like, give them a warning, talk to the coach, kind of go through that spiel, and then assess it post that, right?
Yep. So again, I'll say again, know the age, right? So a lot of those younger ages, I will say in my pregame conference, I'll say, hey, if you're balking and it doesn't affect the play, I'm going to give them a warning the first time. The second time, I'm going to give it a call balk on it. But I will communicate that to the coach when the balk happens. So if a kid doesn't come set, I'm going to warn the player, and I'm also going to tell the coach to say, hey, he's got to come set, otherwise I'm going to call balk. Obviously, if he balks and he throws somebody out, I'm probably going to call the balk right away. And basically, call that runner safe at that point too as well. So once you get to the older ages, like you're doing a high school game, you're doing a varsity level, anything like that. Typically, you won't give warnings. If it's something really close where it, right is on the borderline, maybe I'll talk to that pitcher in between innings or something. But typically in those situations, you will call a balk right away too as well. Cole asked, is there a box in in-house? In seventh and eighth grade and up, there are box. So again, as soon as you can have a runner start leading off, that's when you can have box situations. Again, we got to know it's developmental, right? So I'm probably going to teach players first before I call box. So I'm going to be pretty lenient on the box situation. It is one of the hardest things, and a lot of players will do it. So we want to try to not, call a balk every single time because he's balking every single time. Like we want to make sure that we're teaching the kids and that they're learning from it. But obviously, if it's affecting a play in any sorts, then we have to call that and apply that rule at that point as well. So, yeah, good questions. Okay, last question I have here before we finish up here. If there's nothing else you learned today, what is one thing that I told you a bunch that everyone should do as an umpire anytime the ball is in play? Anybody want to answer that question for me? Get a bunch of their hustle. Look at that. Beautiful.
Move. Get out there.
Now, yes, you are all most of you, I'm not going to imply this rule to everything. Most of you are under the age of 21. You have legs that work and you can run hard. Please do. Someone like a Chris and a Brett. Wow. Chris and Brett.
I've been a coach for 20 years, and the bad umps, they just stand there.
Exactly.
And they get the calls wrong more times than not. So
yes, coaches love it. We as umpire observers love it. Fans love it. If you are getting in the right positioning, it is going to look really good, and it's going to give you so much more good reputation as an umpire too as well. Beautiful. Braden also being confident. Really good one too as well. So, all right, we are done. I apologize for being 3 minutes late for that. Before we leave here, does anyone have any other questions? I will just say this before we take any questions. We do have a couple equipment handouts coming up and also mechanics training. Next Tuesday is going to be our next equipment handout. Review the actual emails to see when those are coming up and also when we have our mechanics training too as well. I was going to see if I can pull up this real quick to see if I can pull up what the actual dates are. But please make sure if you need equipment still, come to the equipment. And then if you are able to come to mechanics training, again, it's going to be a really important thing that we can come to. So make sure we can do that. I have the actual dates right here. So we have Tuesday, April 2nd from 6 to 7 p.m. And then we also have 5 to 6:15 for option 3 before mechanics training. And then mechanics training is going to be Sunday, April 27th from 6:30 to 7:30. Put them in your calendar if you can tonight so that we have everything ready to go. Make sure you're getting equipment. I don't want anyone calling me or texting me after and say, hey, I didn't make it to equipment training because I forgot about it. Really make sure that you make it an effort to come to one of these two options too as well so that we can get you on the field too. Other than that, thank you so much, everybody. I know this was a long and strenuous 4 hours, and I went over a lot of information. The last thing I will just say is, as of today, I do not expect everyone to memorize and know every single rule that we've gone over today. I will say, hopefully, this gives you enough information to start and really push you forward to be ready to umpire at that point. If you took away 50% of this, awesome, great. If you took anything more than that, even better. But review these slides if you can before games. Make sure we're going over the rules. That is going to set yourself up to be a really good umpire, and it's going to give you all that knowledge and experience to be a really good umpire and to call a game as it is to be played. So, again, thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it. Let me know if you have any other questions. Otherwise, have a good night, and I will stay on here for a little bit longer for anything that you guys need from that perspective. So, but thank you again. Have a good night.